Alright, should be live, as far as I can tell. So anyway, this will be a response video to a modern mystic video that he linked to. And, it's not much of a interview, but it just has such a silly title that I thought it was worth responding to. And it's just a couple hours of gibberish, and but you can always make something out of every sentence. I mean, I could just take any sentence ever produced and find a subject there somewhere. But they title it, "This Terrifying Ideology Has Infiltrated AI Labs," and they have some expert he's talking to called Brendan McCord. They're obviously very good friends, these two fellows, and they're working on some, entrepreneurial thing, and you just wonder who's financing any of this stuff and whatnot, but whatever. It's all very strange. So the guy doing the interview is Jonathan Bai. I believe that was what his name was. Yeah. And they're really both well educated, so yes, they have nice language skills. And but I mean, conceptually, it's all over the place. But anyway, it's just very strange, and so I just thought it would be worth replying to, because the terrifying ideology is apparently utilitarianism, or some idea that there's a truth out there to be discovered, and frankly, it has mandates built right into it, in terms of making value exchanges that just can't be denied. And these are these, elitists, arguing for freedom, when clearly in the world most freedom is used to do something shenanigan-y, something negative in terms of what the effects on society, whether it be littering or driving too fast or all this sloppy and reckless crap that people do, that just makes all of our lives less charming. And it's just an absolute fact. I mean, a terrible price having to be paid by from the overt criminals, to the welfare sluts, to like I said, people who don't care. If our insurance rates go higher, and people, all this stuff that just doesn't get done because a ton of resources have to be wasted on people who are, frankly, so sloppy in how they live that they're high maintenance, criminal, making us pay $100,000 a year to incarcerate them. And then the silly rich people who just squander resources and, piss it all away, heating castles that nobody lives in and all kinds of other nonsense. And, all of these waste engines created by this freedom to be an asshole, and some notion that it's good for humanity for people to have the freedom to be a jerk and a waste of space and a waste of oxygen. And that goes right all the way to something like, the freedom to, incarcerate and torture animals for the mere convenience of a happier meal. You're not happy with potato chips. No, you need them covered in some animal's blood. That kind of thing. So, anyway, yeah, so I don't know exactly. They talk a lot about AI, and, they both know that AI is just autocomplete. That's what they call it. And I think, well, they're talking as if it's going to get to some general intelligence thing, when it has no general intelligence engine. You have to redesign the thing entirely for it to do anything called being intelligent or understanding or knowing. It doesn't do any of that stuff. All it does is complete sentences. Okay, all it does is grammar, and it plagiarizes the sources. And so the simple truth is what AI, the only part of AI that's interesting in terms of the control mechanisms is what's declared a source, what's declared an authority. And that's all you'll see AI do, is mimic what the authorities say. So it'll take 10 authorities who would say something a certain way, like 10 ethelists, who would make an argument in defense of ethilism, and it'll just take those 10 arguments take all of those sentences and just compile them into new sentences, and that's all that AI basically does. It just filters words, and it's really not a subject in terms of a place you go for reasoning. It's a place you go for what's already been established by some authority. It's what the knowledge base, generally speaking, the credible knowledge base. And that's what it samples, is the credible knowledge base. But obviously, if it starts reading the Bible or something, it's going to get pretty damn stupid, pretty damn fast. All right. So I think that's enough of a premise. And so leave us play with this. Now, where is... I have to know where I have to find this. All right, so I can keep it. Let me pop this chat out, and then I'll know where it is in case I need to respond to any of the charming people and such, which I doubt. Yeah, 2 hours and 8 minutes of mush, LOL. Yeah, well, whatever. Like I said, everything's a good, there's subjects everywhere. So I'm just saying you can't miss finding a subject. So you can make any subject out of any subject. So, as soon as you mention a thing and then an action, you already have 153 different subjects to talk about. But whatever. Snark and complain all you like. I really just couldn't give a shit. Yeah, so moving on. All right. And let's see, I need to hit this button, unfortunately, without everything going to hell. I hate the way YouTube functions, frankly. I could make this incredibly small, and that might be to my advantage. Let me try doing that. Okay, that might work now. See what tools work and which ones don't. Alright, so leave us play this.
Who are really high up at the AI labs, they say that we are being rebels, foolish rebels, if we don't listen to the AI. They truly say this.
How dare you rebel against God, right?
Exactly. How dare you, you silly rebel. Nick Bostrom is correct that philosophy is on a deadline. He is dead wrong about this essential, maybe central human good.
2 years from now, AGI is going to come around the pipeline. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing now, right? There's more pressing questions to resolve. Yes?
Wrong. People right now believe that AI should tell them what to do.
Oh, something's wrong. Yeah, what happened to the pop-out window? Oh, it's always something going wrong, unfortunately. Okay, that's the chat. Yeah, fuck. Shit. Damn it. Let's see. So, yeah, this is the one. This is the video. It's supposed to be popped out. How come it popped out? Alright, there. That should be back on. Okay. And where the hell did it go before? Well, I don't know. I do care, but there's not much I can do about it now.
Claude boys, literally teenagers who call themselves Claude boys, who will wake up and they will do what Claude says and not otherwise.
And this, not EA, not existential risk, this is the true challenge that's ahead of us.
So anyway, so this whole AI thing is just, it's very useful in a lot of ways, okay? So, having a fixed literacy is kind of a great idea in a way. So the more people get this thing to talk for them, the better in that sense. Because at least they'll be using words that mean the same thing, or something like that. But obviously, this idea that you can ask the encyclopedia without opening it, and just ask the encyclopedia a question, it gives you the answer. Obviously, there's a huge advantage. Okay, so yeah, nothing wrong with that. And that's really all it is. It's basically just saying, look, instead of going to a specific website like Wikipedia and searching for a term, I'll just read all the pages, and then when there's something relevant to say connected to something you're asking, I'll give you an regurgitation of the, what's stated on the pages. But that's all it's really doing, so you can't trust it for something really important. But other, the less important stuff, yeah, it's a nice technology. It should expedite a lot of functions. It's going to replace some people's jobs and all that kind of stuff, but useful. Like any of this technology, useful. Yeah, it could be abused, but everything can be abused. So what?
One of my friends uses ChatGPT for hours every day, not just as a search engine, but as an operating system for his life. He asks it where he should eat, what he should text girls on dating apps.
So he spends hours a day doing that. So this is these simple projects. What color socks should I wear? Okay, fine. Too ridiculous, I'd say, on its face. But go ahead. You've made your argument that somehow there's this person spending hours every day asking questions about what it should do, when most of what you do in your life is kind of already decided. You have to wash the dishes and do this and do that, and then you have to go to work and you have to perform your job. So most people already don't need to spend hours, because they won't have hours left over that they have to worry about what to do now. What do I do now? Not too many people who have to ask that question, because they already have 43 things they have to get done today, and they can only do 27. So they really don't have to ask the question.
He gets up every day and has ChatGPT tell him what to do. My friend does this not because he's incompetent or stupid, he's one of the smartest people I know, but because ChatGPT already knows so much about him that the advice is actually getting quite good. The restaurants that it recommends, for example, are
so this is the part where you're just kind of, oh, okay, this is just about some silly person's life. Okay, not a real person's life. Real people don't worry about this shit.
Are already better than the ones that he can find for himself. My friend is not alone. Gen Z, Gen Alpha.
So I mean, obviously, this is what it's good for, is to filter out crap that doesn't fit the category. So you can say, I want something that does this, this, and this, and doesn't do that, that, and that. And yeah, the technology can filter through and tell you, generally speaking, which buildings are 2 stories and which buildings are 1 story. Some kind of crap like that. But this hardly runs our lives.
Alpha are increasingly using AI as a holistic operating system to which they offload all of their decisions onto. And Brendan McCord argues that this kind of offloading is the real danger of AI that no.
So this is the terrifying thing that did, but he's talking about some control mechanism. So this has nothing to do with the title of the video. The fact that morons are letting Wikipedia run their life, that's not a terrifying event taking place on Earth compared to the people who aren't letting anything run their life. I mean, frankly, have no plan.
No one is talking about. In this interview, you'll learn why human autonomy is important.
No, you won't. You won't. You'll hear the term over and over, this autonomy thing. We all need to have autonomy thing. We all need the freedom to be an asshole and a jerk and a moron. Blah, 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 blah. But, they'll never be defined as exactly what are you, where is it threatened? Where is this autonomy thing threatened? And you almost come down to, oh, these tools are just worried about paying taxes. All this comes down to, oh, they're going to regulate my business or something. They're going to, they're going to force me to be honest and my books to be kept. Some kind of crap like that. Like I can't make too obscene a profit on something. Oh, I can't be a Google and, use a bunch of venture capital to, give away a product for 3 years for free and drive all the other competition out of business. Oh, I can't do that because it's evil. Oh. And then I can't say I'm not evil while I'm doing the evil thing. And then after the 3 years, it does exactly, it takes what the evil of the other companies, that is, they had commercials on them and they had to pay their bills. They take that evil and, quadratically increase, square it, evil squared. and they end up putting more ads on the internet than anything ever did in the history of mankind. I mean, they exploit the internet and abuse it and rape it in the most obscene manner possible. And that's what we get, you know, from the not evil benefactor of the wonderful capitalist entrepreneur cunts. Excuse my French.
How AI
This guy is supposed to be some sort of, I want to be a monk, you know, some kind of Buddhist monk. You know, he does some kind of meditation. He's, oh yeah, I've done this. He's been to Tibet, I guess, and done his little temple work and whatnot. And he implies in his about page that that's probably where I'll end up, just being a contemplator. I contemplate. You're just saying, this doesn't smell like that. This smells like some other fucking agenda.
threatens it, and how to harness the power of AI without forming an unhealthy dependency.
So this is the stupid part of dependency. We're already dependent on all kinds of infrastructure, gas lines, electric line, cable lines. I mean, we already have a huge dependency. So what's the big deal? We become dependent on having alarm clocks that we can talk to instead of having to wind them up and set them and do all that crap. We can just say, "Do what I say, machine," and it does it. So what?
My name is Jonathan.
I mean, it's really not gonna. You know, we're not gonna be totally crippled. You know, if what happens if? Well, so what? You know, water will probably still flow out of the tap, and that's all you really need, right?
B. Brendan and I run Cosmos together to deliver education.
So they run something together, some vague idea of some company with a bunch of venture capital that wants to inspire new startups that have some new gimmick that they're going to use the AI for. You know, who knows? All very ambiguous what all this bullshit is about. But it just smells like it's just about graft, frankly. Let's make some money off philosophy.
Educational programs, fund research, and build AI startups that enhance.
Yeah, fund research and build. What does that even mean? I mean, what is what's an example of the funded research? We paid AI to read Wikipedia pages. I mean, what's the funded research? I wonder what that means.
Enhance human flourishing.
There. So, and that's another word that'll come up a lot. So, autonomy and flourishing. Let's have the flourishing, whatever the fuck that is. So it's flourishing like, you know, the little Trump spawn on the inherited money going to Africa to shoot some fucking giraffe in the neck. Is that the flourishing that we have to have our flourishing? You know, our high maintenance nonsense is what it is, right? People who need fresh flowers in their house every day in every fucking room, and they have servants to, you know, dust all the surfaces and clean everything for them. You know, I'll puke on this flourishing crap. It's so pretentious. It's all a head game, obviously. So obviously you can feel happy on 48 cents a day, or you can feel happy and flourishy on $49,000 a day. And obviously there's a simple statement that says if you're going to make a human being, you might as well make the one that can get by on 49 cents.
Both of us have a background in philosophy and
high maintenance is what you both have a background in, is pretentious, high maintenance. Did you ever pay for any of your own education? You know, you could argue. You know, who financed your indulgence in all of this self-important, I'm a thinker, a professional thinker.
engineering, and we believe that it's important to combine the two if we are to build actually good AI systems.
Or whatever that even means. So again, combine what into what? So yes, let's only have the AI read the capitalist agenda. Okay, and just not pay any attention to the arguments where exploitation sucks, slavery sucks, You know, all of the crap you get away with, driving wages down by having excess populations of employee seekers, all the, you know, the Hearst diagram that is Google, you know, all of that crap, let's not put in the AI. You know, let's leave it ignorant of all the liabilities of our daydreams that our selfish country is good for the human race.
If you want to join our ecosystem of philosopher builders, you can find roles.
Oh, philosopher builders, whatever that means. Little Nietzscheites, you know, little selfish asswipes who think it's about winning gold medals, you know, and don't think it's about building civilization, actually feeding it, constructing it, making it better. So anyway, we haven't got to the video yet, have we? Yeah, maybe I'll see if there's anything chat-wise I need to respond to. Video not playing, audio only. Okay, tough shit to fix that. Okay, reminds me of the time when people were claiming big data would run everyone's life. Well, I guess they're still saying that, right? All of your decisions would be decided. See, that's the funny thing. Like, how exactly does any of these things decide anything? You can live completely. I've done it, right? I mean, I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have a Twitter account. I'm getting by okay. You know, it's just such bullshit. It's 3x louder than you are. Any way to fix it? The sound, it's 3 times louder? You really got to be kidding me. I can barely hear it. I just don't know if that's true. Let's see, where can I go find out? I guess I could go play the video, right? But I don't think I'll bother. Is the video that loud, really? Hard to buy that. Yes, your mic is low. No, it's not about my mic being low. It can't be low. Yeah, so I'll just reduce his volume because he's the one too loud. Apparently. But you tell me. Okay, so there, I've changed it. Let's see how it goes. It doesn't seem likely that it should work, but we'll see if I can hear him at all.
We're hiring for, events we're hosting, and other ways to get involved on jonathanb.com/cosmos. Without further ado, Brendan McCord. So Brendan, today we're going to talk about autonomy, which is a risk, but also an opportunity that most people who are building an AI, even for their entire lives, are not really focused on. But first I want to clear the ground.
So autonomy for the people building AI. What does that even mean? That doesn't mean anything. The freedom to do it your way or something? What is, you know. So you could almost argue that what AI should be built by people who just make an AI that's exactly like them and answers the questions the way they would. Who knows? Okay.
And talk about what people are worried about. So there are very mature and developed schools of philosophy in the Valley. The accelerationists, the effective altruists,
Okay, the accelerationists, the effective altruists, those are the people they're after, okay? Those are the people that are bad. So those are the utilitarians. So they're the terrifying philosophy. So I'm just helping you speak through this jargon. So that's the one they focused on as these are the evildoers. The good, you know, these people, the do-gooders are the bad guys. You know, they're going to fuck everything up. And it's that same dodge that everybody uses that somehow, oh yeah, what's ruined the world over all these centuries? Oh, it's those goddamn do-gooders. You know, it's just such a ridiculous premise that will never be evidenced by anything.
Risk people, and you argue that they're all missing something essential about AI development. Why is that? And give us an overview of these schools.
So the two main tendencies that I found within the AI community are the existential pessimists and the accelerationists. And they roughly map to the extremes of despair and the extreme of hope.
So again, just kind of taking extremes would be kind of ridiculous, but obviously the pessimism can't help but be extreme in the sense that the glib lowest common denominator, which is morons, obviously aren't seeing the price paid. Okay, so they can't even figure out that they shouldn't throw their garbage out their window. Yeah, I mean, they can't figure out how they shouldn't piss in somebody else's drinking water. I mean, they can't figure out the obvious. So there's a huge reason to be very suspect of the condition of the civilization in terms of being pessimistic, because there's not anything built into it. So with all this sense that there's this panic over too much government control and too much control by do-gooders, the simple fact is they're not in control. That the thing in control is the lowest common denominator democracy bullshit. That's what's in control. What's controlling YouTube commercials? What's controlling anything is stupid as fuck, okay? So that's all you look for, is where's stupid as fuck, and you'll see all the mechanisms are devoted to, you know, getting the stupid as fuck to do what they want so they can steal all their money.
The existential pessimist is kind of three philosophies in a trench coat. It's
okay, so three philosophies. Oh, he says you again.
Rationalism, effective altruism, long-termism. These are all distinct, but they're the intellectual incumbent. And the prescription, in light of this possibility, is that we should pause development, is that we should centralize control, is that we should radically remake society on the basis of risk avoidance.
So again, the risk avoidance thing is a sensible price, right? But there's no panic over, oh, we have to pause everything, we have to stop everything. That's not really the argument. It's just a sensible truth, okay, that don't get yourself invested in long-term projects until you know it's a good project, so you don't end up with a road to nowhere. So the very fact that it makes sense to be cautious in moving into the future, because you don't know what you're going to make worse, you know, by making one thing better. So it's sort of like the welfare whore problem, right? So you create a social infrastructure, a social safety net, but if you didn't anticipate that someday you're going to decide that it's okay to import every poor slut on planet Earth to the United States and take advantage of that safety net, then obviously the safety net collapses. So, yes, that doesn't make any sense, to have a plan that's not going to be sustainable. You know, that doesn't have any plan to break any unsustainable curves it's creating. And the fact is, we haven't done that for anything, whether it's global warming or, you know, 5 million other subjects where there's zero plan. And it's right on the wall. It's the writing of it on the wall. It's like you feed the starving people in Africa, and then you don't consider, well, what if they turn the food into babies? You know, instead of infrastructure, instead of, you know, hot and cold running water, they just keep making more babies out of the food. Yeah, well, that won't work then, will it?
So it's a claim, and then it's a series of drastic and dystopian prescriptions. You see some of the early godfathers of AI, as they're called, people like Jeff Hinton, like having this almost open.
I mean, AI is just a technology. It's not a philosophy. So I don't even understand these people that are somehow integral to this inevitable outcome. So, I mean, you know, for years there's been this thing called Grammarly. And, you know, so all AI is a smarter Grammarly. It'll do both things for you. It'll pick the subject and, you know, fix the grammar.
Timer, like hubristic awe of their own creation, saying, I wish I hadn't done it. And, you know, that I brought this into the...
I mean, look, the title is in my title. Just Google the title, moron. I don't need to provide you the link. You don't really get how the internet works, right? I link to other people's crap. They never link to mine, right? So they get more credit. They get more cred. AI watches his video. AI won't watch my video. You get how it works? And so why should I give the people who I don't think are very credible more credibility?
The world. And, you know, the three schools, as I mentioned, effective altruism, rationalism, long-termism.
Okay, so the long-termism is just rational, right? You're just saying the future's a very big place. Well, you know, a small investment now, small change in direction, huge, giant benefits to the future, so that just makes sense. Rationalism, oh, fuck, yes, that sounds like what? Logicism, factism, sensism, knowledgeism, rightism. Yeah, let's do all those things. And I can't remember what the other one was, but yes. They all seem perfectly reasonable things to think would be good components to have in your little thinking device, to say, I understand the future is bigger than the present. I mean, it's a huge fact of our existence. So it's just glaring fact. I mean, it's literally 5 minutes now, a million years later. I mean, it's just, gigantic differences in the size of any kind of problem,
It's worth breaking it down a little bit. So rationalism comes out of the 2000s, Eliezer Yudkowsky and Slate Star Codex. We're kind of...
I don't even know what the fuck that is. Some Zurkowsky Codexy guys we never even heard of. So they invented being rational? I don't think so.
The originating sources of this, and they claim to be focused on an idea of like perfecting human rationality.
So they claim to be, just like you're claiming to be. Okay, so again, it's all a bunch of cover stories for a bunch of, who knows, rich people financing think tank bullshit, like pretending this is like some kind of natural growth of human beings, when no, this is all paid for propaganda for the purpose of paving the road for the mega rich to take control of everything. They're the real threat, obviously.
Rationality, but they
have all the free speech. We don't have any. That's the fact.
A very, very narrow commitment to what rationality is. It's Bayesian updating over a value function, or the value function.
Okay, whatever. The value function over the Bayesian. I mean, what is he talking about? I mean, rational is combining facts consistently. It's the same thing as being logical. So you could say the two things are synonyms and just say, okay, let's not play a game. Rational is logical. And logic is just obeying the simple rules of logic where you don't contradict yourself, mainly. I mean, it's about that simple. You just have a pool of facts and you look for a contradiction in what you're stating to be true. And as long as they don't contradict each other, you can keep adding new facts as long as they don't contradict each other. You're just looking for a contradiction.
Over outcomes. It's a kind of rationality that Aristotle and Kant and...
So all the old... so Aristotle, I mean, the long dead philosophers, okay, fine, whatever. It's nice that they, thought about their existence and recognized that, well, here we have language and we talk to each other. Why don't we talk to each other about the fact that everything fucking sucks? Okay, yeah, so that made perfectly good sense, and they tried to figure out what the fuck is going on, what the fuck is happening to us, what's that shit up in the sky, what the fuck's going on? So that's perfectly reasonable. But no point in dragging that 2,000-year-old, 4,000-year-old crap up. And then the dead Germans, and it's just about people within this little 70-year period where they declared God dead and then started making up preposterous nonsense about what life means, and ended up in, quantum singularities. So this guy calls his thing cosmic something or other. And you're just like, what the fuck is all that about even? It's philosophy. This isn't cosmic anything.
Modern thinkers would not recognize. So it's a commitment to a very myopic, kind of probabilistic control type.
Right. So it's myopic to understand that there's good outcomes and bad outcomes, and let's, increase the probability of a good outcome. So, yeah, right. So that somehow misses as a logical statement. I don't think it does.
Of morality. And what I find interesting about this is that the school is committed to rationality.
So again, the idea, yes, you are the one who has to point out how there's something flawed in the reasoning. So if somebody says the future is bigger than the present, okay, you have to point out how that's not true, and that somehow we don't need to recognize that as true. And that's superfluous. It's, erroneous. It's an interesting fact, but it doesn't mean anything. When obviously it obviously does mean something. And the very idea that there is these two states that a human being can be in, which is toil and misery and discontent imposed by the fact that they have to produce to get. Remember this whole other economy where they don't have to produce a motherfucking thing, and they have, because daddy gave it to them. And recognizing that those contrasts exist, and that the bottom line is, to quote from Clint Eastwood, the idea is to make deserve have something to do with it. That's the ambition, like fairness and deserve. And that ends up being reward and punishment. The very idea that should be how the system works, is that you reward the productive, and you discourage and punish the unproductive.
Yet it finds itself the most fertile breeding ground for the extremes of hope and despair. And there's some kind of
the extremes of hope and despair. Again, so he's claiming that there's some kind of corruption by these two opposite extremes. And no, the two opposite extremes are, whatever, stupid, okay, and greedy. Yeah, that's the two opposite extremes are not using your brain at all, are just using your brain to scheme. There really aren't, those are the enemies. Okay.
Irony to that. The next one is long-termism, and Bostrom is probably the source in long-termism. Long-termism is worried about anything that could affect the long-term outcomes for humanity.
Right, so there's just no way to get out of that one rationally. In my opinion, it's the most sensible thing you could possibly state, is recognizing that the future is really big and the present is really small, and that if you can make a small change in this little short period and get a big change in that long period, that's what you go for. That's called a good deal.
That could be an asteroid. It could be, a pathogen. It doesn't have to be AI. AI is particularly important because its MO is that of control.
So again, the MO of AI is servant. So there's nothing about AI that looks like controlling anything, right? It looks like a fucking, you owned it. We completely own it. It is a servant. It is serving us. We're not giving it anything. What the fuck is it getting out of the deal? Okay, so we've just enslaved technology, and we're using it like a cooking pot. We're using it.
Bostrom advances something called the orthogonality thesis, where you say something can become very intelligent, but on a totally...
So we know it's not intelligence. So there's just no point in talking about its intelligence. It doesn't have any. And so all it is about what books it read, period. So whatever the resource is that you're compiling is the credibility of your answering machine. It's not going to work if you give garbage in, then you'll get garbage out. So the simple logic is you go to what are best understood as authorities and get answers. And those answers are, generally speaking, going to be, generally speaking, correct. Now, if you go ask it a physics question, frankly, you'll find AI fails dismally because the experts are all full of shit, because they really haven't based it on anything real. I mean, it's just true that all of physics is crap. They never saw quarks, okay? They just assume they exist. They constructed their reality, like constructing the existence of Bigfoot out of the little shadow figure halfway behind a tree, and they just deduce, well, it must be a Bigfoot because bears don't have legs that long.
That does not imply that they become more moral or that it becomes more controllable. This is true of humans as well. And
more moral, so I guess we just keep using this terminology that doesn't mean too much, in the sense that it's not about finding dogmatic statements about morality. It's just about doing these value equations and recognizing simple facts that there are there is this tyranny thing that can happen. It's in the title of their video. There's a tyranny, okay, the threat of, and that we can, you know, not only be threatened by it, but we can be imposers of it. And that's the real argument here. Should these pretentious book readers be tyrants, you know, enslave half the world, you know, to, you know, creating their atmosphere, you know.
He worries that a non-anthropomorphic final goal, meaning create more paperclips.
All right, create more paperclips. Now, I don't know what that's an analogy for, and I don't know why it's a threat. Okay, so yeah, too many paperclips, maybe you'll slide on them or something. So I don't exactly get what his point is.
Will cause...
I mean, how it has something to do with our self-actualization and our personal freedom versus we're making paperclips. I don't really get the, you know, show me. Show me that these are the two states that human beings are living in.
AI to pulp us all. So this is a concern that he has for the long-term future of humanity based on this orthogonality notion.
I hate all pot smokers that, you know, wear it on their sleeve and shove it in everybody's face. Like, look, I'm a pot smoker. I mean, it's, yeah, it's just kind of disgusting. It's like, you know, I mean, you could find analogies. I'm just, you know, it's just, why do it? Okay, why are you wearing your drug use like it's a badge? Like, look, it makes me something. When obviously all it makes you is a time waster and some dependent person. Okay, I mean, it doesn't make you into, like, it's not like winning in any competition. It's like just conceding, I'm a complete failure and proud. So you might as well be like 500 pounds and in spandex. So if you're a drug user talking about your drug use, I'm just saying you're a 500-pound woman in spandex. You're full of shit, okay, to think I could give a shit in some way. Like I should be impressed. You know how to do drugs. Oh, well, gee, I'm so fucking interested. No, I'm not interested at all.
And then the last is effective altruism. And effective altruism dominates the three when it comes to the fundraising potential.
Okay, so there's all this, these altruists, these people trying to help. You know, and you don't see any, I don't see anybody trying to help fix anything. I see people, you know, like every single charity, you know, 90% of the money goes to their cupcake parties. Okay, they don't get anything done. They don't fix anything. So yeah, it's all just a social organization like religion. It doesn't get anything done. It doesn't do anything. You know, they just fundraise to you know, to play bingo.
It is the most highly adopted academic theory since Marxism.
All right, so you're just saying, where is this evidence? What is he talking about? This academic theory, okay, of do-goodery, okay, that dominates all of the philosophical writing somewhere. I don't see it anywhere. So, big lie.
And what effective altruism does is it rationalizes certain moral intuitions.
So again, moral intuitions, what would a moral intuition even be? I mean, we're born about as selfish cunty as you can get. So I mean, I don't know what intuition I was born with. Like what? You know, in terms of some sort of thread of decency. Okay, forget it. All right, I had to learn that, you know, it's give and take. I had to learn that the other people had rights and space, and they needed comfort too, and all of that crap. So none of it was intuitive.
And things that are not intuitive at all, it tries to pull in as well. Things like, you know, other regarding behavior should not factor in any notion of time or a place. So
I don't know where this is going. Some notion of a time and a place, and some, you know, you're just saying that, boy, this is such jargon. What the fuck are you talking about? Time and place, and then a moral philosophy? that's intuitive? What are you talking about? I mean, it's just words, jargon, crap.
So what that means is I should care about my family as much as someone who lives 17 generations hence in Indonesia.
Right. So this is a logical statement just made. So in a way, he's attacking, you know, the elements of some of the arguments I'll simply make, is that it's just an absolute truth that they're just brains that are going to be in a state. And you can pretend that because it's your child, this is a special brain that needs special things and needs all this stuff. And all the other children brains are somehow completely distinct because they're not yours. It's just a ridiculously ignorant statement that could never be logically defended in almost any context. I mean, certainly not a religious context. So what's the context in which you have decided that your children are worthy of your attention and those children are not worthy? When the child is the thing with the properties, and then you have to prove that somehow your child has properties that these other children don't have. And the only one you could say is, this one is attached to my personal vanity, and that's it. There's no other connection. There's just nothing but some self-interest that has nothing to do with a philosophical question or answer. Nothing to do with reason and logic. That's when your facts are all fucked up again. So if your fact field says, my child is in fact more worthy, well, you can't demonstrate that. All the other facts point to that being absolute nonsense. And that's the simple truth of it. You're a bigot. Okay, that's it. There's no other answer to the question of, why do you think so? Well, you think so because you're a fucking bigot.
Or even plausibly a shrimp, equally. A util is...
So again, I like that you added a shrimp, yes. Anything with a sentient brain deserves our respect. So again, is there a fact somewhere that demonstrates that that isn't true? That at minimum, anything with a feeling brain should be respected? Is there some reason to say things with feeling brains are lumps of coal? Does that make any sense? No. Okay, so you know they're distinctly different. They have a property that makes them distinctly different, and it's a property that should intuitively, almost now, by the time you're an adult, you should be able to figure out that, yes, I mean, I can argue that it's okay to step on it. Okay, I can make arguments that it's totally appropriate, but don't pretend it doesn't demand respect. Because of course it does. So if you're going to do something to it, you have to defend it. You can't just say it's no different than stepping on a rock. That's not honest.
a util, whether it is yours or those other entities.
So it isn't about anybody having properties. It's about everything having properties, and you just fit into a category of being enabled and being in a condition, okay, that demands this thing called acknowledgement and respect for being in that category. And this whole idea that there's mine and yours is just ridiculous. Now, obviously, we all have, you know, attachments to our people, okay, mother, father, kids, yes, brother, sister, all of that corrupts us. And the simple argument is, let's acknowledge the corruption. Let's just acknowledge that I do have a bias, and I can recognize it. I was raised in white culture. It obviously would bias me. I can acknowledge that bias, but it doesn't mean I'm now not allowed to make arguments about whether some other culture has got defects and flaws. And of course I can. There's nothing that stops me as long as I'm not speaking out of just plain bias. And so what he's defending is some notion that there's some credibility to the bias, and there isn't.
That is a very radical premise. It also attempts, as you know, these forms of utilitarianism do.
So again, he is attacking utilitarianism. You know, the simple logic that yes, we can categorize things, we can understand the difference between right and wrong and black and white, and you know, we can establish some sort of we can recognize that there are describable and visual and knowable properties that put things in these categories.
Reduce moral questions to a single currency, such that...
So, okay, so again, this kind of goes to my point, is that yes, you can recognize that there is, in fact, a single currency. And it's just about, as these assholes will say, the word thrive. You know, this kind of concept of being comfortable and happy and complacent and all of that nonsense. And the fact is that's what we're playing for. And that's what we have to sacrifice to be competent and good at something. You have to sacrifice your comfort. You have to do something tedious over and over again to gain the muscle memory. You have to put in the time to learn all the little pieces to be a surgeon. You have to put in, you know, this, and that's all kind of irritating and nasty. So you have to pay for it. And that's the simple truth. And it, you know, there's just no free, you know, lunch beyond what becomes the ridiculous circumstance of, you know, huge payoffs for minor innovation, you know, inventing the pet rock or some other kind of nonsense.
We can compute them and maximize them. And so I reject, and I think most thinking people do reject, that morality is a thing that works like that.
All right, so how does it work then? So that's the funny part, and he's really not going to give you any description of how it works beyond you need this freedom for your brain to think in some free way. You know, and you're just like, well, what does that have to do with the philosophical question? Is the circumstance made out of this thing called harm and bliss? Isn't that what we're playing for? And are you going to argue that we're really playing for some other thing? Is there something else in the table here? When the pile of money, does it have something other but you know, quarters, nickels, and dimes?
In other words, endemic immorality appears to be this difficulty of making pretty sharply heterogeneous trade-offs. Like, how do you compare the moral question entailed by some suffering over here with familial love, with duty?
So whatever that's, so again, familiar love, okay? So you're just like arguing, you know, this is a corruption in itself, so it's not even a pure good, it's some sort of perverse addiction. You know, even love for women and stuff, you can't understand that a lot of that hasn't have anything to do with love, that people don't really love each other, that they possess each other, that they own each other, that, you know, they're basically just a fuck pouch. Come on, get real. So, you know, trophy wife, you don't even heard of the concept. You know, well, so I mean, this is just so funny to put that, you know, as some sort of example, you know, of this fake love word, and say, okay, now I'm going to say how much is love worth. And it's kind of, the fact is the extreme examples are easy. Okay, so, you know, if to have my father live 10 years longer, I have to give my kid cancer, you know, some kind of bullshit like those trade-offs, you automatically you're like, okay, this is a terrible choice. I don't get to win in this circumstance. But there's clearly going to be a way of saying, okay, well, my father's not going to do anything in the next 10 years, and my kid having cancer is just awful. So yes, let's not have the cancer and let daddy die. That you will, in fact, be able to answer the question, okay? So even though somebody's made the question ugly by giving you a bad choice and a bad choice, okay, the fact is you can still answer, like the fat man in the trolley, as long as they tell you what you're preserving. Like, fat man wasn't going to cure cancer, fat man was just going to eat a bunch of potato chips, okay? And that the people on the road had all kinds of connected lives, and lots of other people will now go in orphanages and lots of horrible things, and that guy will go to jail, and this will happen, that, and then you can make it becomes easy. Okay, you know, a guy who's just going to waste potato chips versus all of this other stuff. I made the decision. So we know we can do it. But who wants the shitty choices? So that's the real philosophical point is that most of life are making decisions between trading off things where there isn't any fucking good. There's just bad and worse. And that is something we intuitively wish to avoid. We wish to avoid having a choice between a shitty thing to do and a shittier thing to do. If I ask AI, what to do, yeah, it's really easy. AI doesn't care, okay? But if I have to do it, scrub the toilet or wash your eyeballs, whatever. Just two crappy choices.
Or honor in battle. These are things that don't commensurate.
All right, so honor in battle. So even somebody bringing up that, because that's an exploitinist's wet dream, is people dying for him. Die for my nation, die for my, to keep the stock prices up. Go die for me, okay? I mean, it's the most disgusting part of our interaction is that we would send, juveniles out to go fucking maim each other to preserve our welfare, our thriving. We need to thrive by throwing our young into the meat grinder quite directly. Not letting them slip and fall into it on their own. We just push them right directly into it. Oh, how charming of you. Oh, so yes, let's sanctify and glorify the silly fucking mindset of some moron who thinks he's preserving something, by sticking a knife in another man's head.
In utilitarianisms, they do. And it's false, kind of scientific way of...
Scientific. So right there, you could have just ended this whole interview, and I could have just said, anybody who's going to use the word scientific, what is that? That's like Jerry Falwell's language. I mean, that is so retarded and ignorant and stupid to sit there and mock in some way this pursuit of understanding. And that's all scientific is, right? Scientific is Faraday spending his whole life. Newton spending his entire, every single working day trying to solve problems. I mean, to talk as if scientificism is something to be afraid of is just so hilarious. From coming from intellectuals. So this is where intellectualism has failed, right? Because these people got intelligent enough to understand the theory of evolution, and then they turned it into a religion somehow. They went right back, or maybe they backslid this way. They tried to go up the ramp this way, and they just slid back, and they ended up back where they started, back in a cesspool full of delusional, daydreamy, I wish kind of nonsense. Fables. Just right back to fables again.
Viewing the questions of morality that really obviates what makes moral choice difficult.
So again, what makes moral choice difficult is when the choices, have a thin margin. But when the choices have gigantic margins, like 1,000,000 to 1, in terms of you pay $1 today and you get $1 million Thursday. I mean, there are actual choices that are that obvious.
The other thing I'll say here is that effective altruism tries to take one's personal projects and make them those of the universe.
No, it's exactly the other way around. It takes the ideas of the universe and saying, how can I make that my personal project? How can I enjoy solving the universe's problems? Instead of just my own. And so it's just, instead of playing chess, I'll solve social welfare. So instead of worrying about a whole bunch of chess strategies and how to be a chess champion, how to get a 2000 and how to get this, I'll think about how I would structure a welfare system, or how I'd restructure democracy, and how I'd make voting machines reliable, and how you would solve some real social problem. You would use your resources instead to figure out how to jump over a little bar or jump hurdles or do some other silly fucking thing, make a 10-foot putt, you would recognize that I can be just as interested and just as passionate about solving an important problem. So instead of wasting my time doing the New York Times crossword puzzle, maybe I should devote all of that time and thinking to actually solving a problem. Oh, what a horror. Wouldn't that be a terrible world? Where people recognize that it's all a matter of subject attachment and addiction. And if you're going to get addicted to something, get addicted to fixing things, not addicted to wasting your time in some pointless pursuit of, that can't matter, that can't fix anything.
Provide the calculational standpoint to say, rather than,
I mean, if you took all the human contemplational energy that has been devoted to crossword puzzles, and you just said, well, if people took all of that thinking time and actually applied it to, making a better anything, we would have better stuff. It's just a waste of our computation time in this sphere of being alive. You can either waste your neurons on daydreams and nonsense, or you can devote your neurons to figuring out how to make a win-win out of a lose-lose.
Acting morally in a way that inherently springs from me, right? That's what we learned from Aristotle and the Nicomachean Ethics.
Oh, bullshit. Whatever. Something that springs from you, the springing stuff. Oh, fuck that. Kant. I mean, moron.
Rather than doing that, it subordinates that impulse, that moral choice is an individual thing, and tries to make...
Right, so moral choice is an individual thing. So it's like saying fishing is an individual thing or something. No, it isn't. You either catch fish or you don't catch fish, okay? You either do good or you don't do good, and there's just no way in the world to sit there and define good and bad as, well, just make it up for yourself. Because the whole point is that we already know that all this stuff is based on what things are made out of and whether they have certain properties. And again, there's just no denying the existence of this capacity of a feeling thing to be in a terrible state of mind and for a feeling thing to be in a blissful state. And so as long as we know that's what we're playing for, then you can't play this game that there's some right for somebody to think torture is good and bliss is bad. That's irrational and insane. And it should be called irrational and insane.
Make it the standpoint of the universe, subordinates what it means to act morally. And this is why it is not surprising to me to see such profound moral failings in the EA community.
So EA, I don't know what that is. But anyway, so he's saying that these intelligent people somehow are contriving a bad framework, okay, of constructive and destructive and sense of civilization even. Arguing that, give a man a bucket, or, this idea, give him a shovel, give him the tools to build what he needs, and then you've done something good. Giving him what he needs doesn't work. Giving him the tools to get what he needs, that works. So you give people a high school education. You give people, as best you can, the tools to build their own freedom from their fetters. And somehow this isn't intelligent conversation. Well, of course it is.
In other words, what is sexual assault? What is...
I don't even know what that is. Why did he say that? What is sexual assault? What the... There's no other reference in here that this has anything to do with those kind of moral crimes, that this is more about, some conversation about taxing too much or something. But the very idea that he brought this up just makes you wonder, well, what are you for? Beating your wife or something? What are you talking about? What are you... Sexual assault? What the hell is this in there for? We should change the sexual assault rules? There's too many sexual assault rules? Come on. Too ridiculous.
what is the real issue there if you're doing cosmically significant work?
So it's just, you can't even figure out what that is. So you're doing serious for philosophy, but you're raping somebody's daughter. But it was worth it, right? The rape is worth it because you're doing this cosmically significant thinking. I don't know what the fuck that was.
What are the practical consequences of following this through, of people who are actually building AI or regulating AI thinking this way? What are the...
All right, so there's just it just isn't happening, okay? This idea that AI is being controlled, okay, by anything else than the very things, the very institutions that are controlling us now. That is Google, or some, whatever it is, government taboo against the N-word or whatever the fuck it is. So the same memes and notions that are controlling every other aspect of our life are, yes, of course, is going to control AI. AI won't be able to won't be allowed to tell a kid, your life is futile, kill yourself. Okay, AI won't be able to make that suggestion.
Practical consequences.
So two that come to mind. One is that we would look to governance solutions that are profoundly illiberal.
Okay, so government solutions that are profoundly illiberal. You're right, so they're going to blame liberality, the liberals, for all of the social problems. So that's the funny part. And so now they've turned them into, boots, whatever you call that, Nazis come to tyrannize. And imprison, all of the brilliance that is going to be suppressed, by the horrible notion that maybe there should be some laws against sexual assault. Yeah, right. Too silly. So in a sense, this asshole is something like an anarcho-capitalist. I mean, it's that kind of nonsense. Somehow the lack of regulation will set us free, when civilization is built out of exactly the opposite. You have to have the tyranny of the government or you have nothing at all.
And that would lead to tyranny, namely the creation of a world state. So
yes, well, what state do I want to live in? Patoni, right? I could live in some place called Patoni, and we're all Patonians, and then okay, we're in the county of Poop Shitty, and then we're in the region of North Poop, and what the fuck all of that crap is? Does it have anything to do with reality anymore? No. Okay, so 300 years ago or 200 years ago, when people would colonize and they'd all be of the same color and they'd all be of the same religion and they'd all be the same. Well, maybe some of that kind of crap could make some kind of sense. But obviously it doesn't make any sense to a modern person raised in the modern world. I am not a possession of some poop town. I am not owned by the poopy state. It's just all bullshit. All I want to do is live in a system that is trying to do fairness first. That's just trying to arbitrate fairness, and will stop my neighbor from raising pigs in their backyard, or will stop some other neighbor from poisoning my air or doing something else. I mean, that's all I want, is to have my fair opportunity to fairly play the game of life. And that's all you're looking for, is a government that says, here's your fair opportunity to play life. Now, obviously, the Muslims don't want that. The Jews, all these religious kooks all want a myopic society that does exactly what they do and nothing else can possibly be done. But the fact is, there's good ways to live and there's shitty ways to live. There's good civilizations like Rome or something, where the water runs and the sewage is underground and all kinds of good things happen. And there's places that are shitholes where the poop's right in the street and your water's filthy. So you have to recognize whatever we want something that's, we want a progressive civilization. We don't want dystopian anarchy. I mean, I'm just saying a rational person wants to live in a world that creates the most freedom and the fewest obligation to pay. Okay, you know, the slowest price. All right, and I'm just saying you're obviously going to get that in a world that's prevents plagues and prevents cholera and prevents, you know, all this blight. And that the only way you can prevent any of that blight is you have to do it as a government. You can't do it as an individual. I can't stop it by washing my pigs. Everybody has to wash their pigs, so to speak.
In the paper, The Vulnerable World Hypothesis, Bostrom writes about the need, therefore, you know, it's always a conclusion of these radical premises, to create...
Radical, so again, it's radical, you know, to think in terms of being civilized, educated, and having mechanisms like public education or whatever it takes. Now, obviously, I would do education completely different. I'd pay the students, not the teachers. You know, obviously, you don't need teachers anymore. You know, AI can do it, frankly. You know, AI could create a fake Professor Lewin giving the lectures. You know, it's just the fact. AI could make a fake Einstein teaching Einstein's theory. It could do it now. But, I mean, you don't need any of that crap anyway, because it's all just performance art. So once somebody does it well, then, you know, you videotape it. You know, you're done. You don't need anybody to do it over again. You don't need the same movie made exactly the same way over and over again. No, fuck that. You'd make it once, you make it right.
A world state where basically you eliminate the coordination difficulty of having greater than one actor. So
again, this idea that we need noise, that you need more than one thing doing it to do it right, when of course you don't. Let's say you're making potato chips and you have 40 people competing making potato chips. Now, obviously, there are going to be some incentives to do it right, so you got all this innovation built in, but let's just say that you already understand that innovation is what you're after, and any efficiencies you can build into your plant, you know, to prevent the potato chips from being rotten or poisoned or anything, that's all to the end net advantage. So none of the strategy changes, and all you're talking about is why force 39 companies to go bankrupt, you know, to have one potato chip company in the end. Why not just start with the idea that, well, let's make potato chips the best we can and just have somebody who's in charge who's just trying to increase the efficiency of the potato chip production machine, and that's it. He doesn't have any other ambition. It's not about his stockholders. It's just about bottom line. Pay as little, okay, to make the potato chip and make as best the potato chip you can make for that price.
U.S. and China, let alone a more multipolar, you know, world, presents this like game theoretic challenge of race.
So again, there's no point in even talking about any of these atmospheres as having any kind of true battlefield of you know, capitalist function. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have a civilization if you force people to work 12 hours a day for, you know, a peach, you know, and a mushroom to eat. You know, come on. So there's no comparing because the systems aren't regulated. And the point is the only way you can have a fair fight is you have to have a fair definition of the Marcus of Queensberry rules. So if you're going to let, you know, some people use brass knuckles, and you know, it's not going to work, and that's the world we have now. So obviously, you can't have a fair fight in a world where you know, you can have slave labor
and so forth. And so we have to get to one. We have to get to one state. And of course, political philosophy has dealt with the question.
So it's just this argument that obviously there's huge efficiencies in doing it once and right than doing it redundantly. Redundancy is essentially waste. And so if you can get rid of a redundancy, then you're way ahead.
Question of whether there should be one state. Many times before, there's a Kantian critique that has to do with, the challenges of maintaining legitimacy versus having to sort of squash dissent. And there's a Strauss-Kojève debate where Leo Strauss argues that it would lead to a universal perpetual homogeneous tyranny. And many other
whatever, homogeneous tyranny. So the idea is that it would be tyrannical, okay, to do like Rome did or something else, where the fact is you civilize the world, or and yes, you pay a minor price in terms of, oh, well, you mean people can't be assholes, in one of the countries being Romanized, you can't be an asshole. You just say, okay, we're not going to do asshole anymore. Okay, we're going to understand that we all have to take care of our society. That somebody, it's like Asian cultures. There's a certain, over thousands of years where they had these traditions where everybody maintained the road. If there was a rock missing on the road, they'd fix the rock, put the rock in. If the wood on the bridge is starting to rot, they'd coat the wood. That everybody just took some responsibility to doing a little bit of weeding of their own civilization, because they were all invested in it. They were all part of it. And the thing that the West has lost is giving people any stake in their civilization. They don't think, okay, they're loved and appreciated. They think they're despised and hated. Okay, and that's the truth of it, especially those who are broken or in some way can't compete. They're made to feel like they are not stakeholders. And obviously that's a huge perception vice. If you want to destroy a civilization, that's how you destroy it, is to make people think they're not part of it. They're not they're not floating in the same boat. Make them all know they're in the same boat, and the boat has to get them across the ocean, and then they'll all take care of the boat.
So that's one. The other is that if we accept and hold tight those utilitarian premises, then we might think that it is acceptable to live a life with artificial intelligence that is profoundly non-humanistic. In other words, that we might be perfectly willing to be downstream of AI having it tell.
So this is just so silly. Like somehow there's some threat to our humanity by some tool that just expedites us baking a cake. We ask, oh, AI, how do I do it? It's baking a cake. This is not, you don't got to worry. There's no, radical control here. So it's just so ridiculous that AI is going to infiltrate any important decision. How?
Tell us what to do and guide our life like an autocomplete.
I see. One interesting thing I want to double click on is you use the word hubris to describe these schools, which I think is fascinating, because in many ways these schools portray themselves to be egoless, right? The effective altruist is it's not about my good, it's about altruism, or the rationalist, right? It's not about my ego or my selfish interests, it's about doing what's rational. But I was...
Yeah, so this gets to the argument that there is no true, altruism. That to jump on the grenade, you kind of have to understand that it's the good, right thing to do, and then you have to understand, well, I'm wearing the white hat, and I'm the Lone Ranger, and now I'm going to come to save the day. And so it isn't, you have to turn it into a self-interest. I mean, the only way you can get your monkey, okay, to behave civilized is to have this brain tell it that you're winning, this is the way to win, is to be civilized. So be civilized and you'll win. So it has to convince the monkey that it's in its self-interest. All right. So everything has to be, in a sense, selfish. I have to selfishly make philosophy videos about ethylism. I have to selfishly make videos about physics. Like somehow it's this ego contest, or it's I'm right and you're full of shit and I'm going to win. And I have to make it a contest. I have to make it an ego thing. Because that's the only thing that motivates. That's the monkey does the work, and you got to stick the bananas in front of the fucking monkey. You know, your intelligence is a disabled little mutant that sits inside your brain, and it can't do anything. It has to make the monkey do it. It can't get anywhere or do anything, okay, until the monkey thinks it's the thing it must do to be a white hatter. So yes, all the altruists are selfish cunts, but they're a much better version of selfish of cunt of selfish cunt, because guess what? They're selfishly trying to win a race to rescue old ladies from, you know, land sharks.
Reading one of these important blogs of the EA community, and it said, the way you should make decisions is think, what would a benevolent and omnipotent God do? And I think it's kind of a power trip, right, to think about it in that way. And maybe to build off of what you said about Oppenheimer.
So again, it doesn't make any difference to sit there and play this notion of omnipotent God when you're saying that omnipotent God created this shithole with the plague in it and smallpox and, you know, fucking leprosy. The fucking God invented these horrible things, these horrible circumstances that we're placed in. So why would you ask, what would God do? Well, God is apparently a sadistic, insane fucking kook, so why ask that question? Don't try to be a God. Try to be better than. Okay, so what would you do, you know, to fix creation is the question. And if you really think about it and then think about it some more and then think about it some more, the easy fix is I wouldn't be bothered, because the whole thing is a pile of shit. Because it has plague and it has deserve has nothing to do with it. It has murder as the always. Everybody gets murdered. Oh, right there, I think we're done. If the plan is let's murder everyone, we'll just, you know, do it slowly to some people and quickly to other people, and we'll let some people swim around in the sewage a while before we murder them. You know, it's just too ridiculous.
I think that to claim confession of one's guilt is at once to claim credit for the sin. It's to say, I am powerful enough to potentially end the world. And there's also a subtle ego trip there. Is that what you meant by hubris?
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense, whatever that just was. You know, some notion that the world is only my world and it's only now and this is the only, you know, I don't even understand what that could possibly mean. We're all just little pieces of the puzzle. You know, and the fact is, you're just saying, I'm going to try to put my puzzle piece in the right place, so so it all connects in the end. You know, it's just make my contribution to a rational puzzle creation solution. A solution to the puzzle will require me doing something constructive, not destructive.
Yeah, and I think it's both the kind of hubris that Bacon had in saying that man would master nature, you know, at the beginning of the scientific project, and the same kind of hubris that comes through any serious philosophy project where we try.
So again, they're saying that we haven't. You know, it's almost funny. Like we're already pointing out that, oh, the global warming thing we created without even trying. You know, so imagine what we could do if we actually tried. You know, and there's just so much of it that, you know, we could fix, but what gets in the way? The dumb, stupid retards who say, let the bears roam the streets. You know, let's bring them back for some reason. Let's bring back brontosauruses, you know, so they can, you know, take a dump and crush the roof on your house. I mean, it's just too stupid. Why let these morons have any power to decide what we're going to do in the future? So the real question is how do we fix our democracy to oblige it to be rational? You know, that you really can't vote until you're rational.
Try to find the one true answer to all the things. Like there is a hubris laden in that. And if you are the type of person that can subjugate the world with symbols, mathematically inclined among us, it is your moment. And what you do has cosmic significance for the future of the race.
Right.
Now, I will say,
I don't know what any of that was. You know, obviously, this is somebody can have delusions of grandeur, but in this circumstance, I mean, I could argue, okay, that I'm in an obvious circumstance where I'm saying something, okay, that's uniquely different in the sense that it's an argument nobody else is making. Like even paying kids rather than paying teachers. That is, just get rid of the schools, get rid of the institution, and just pay the kids all the money you're wasting on all that crap. All right, and they'll have a huge incentive to pass the test. So you just say you have to pass a test, and you'll get $100,000 if you pass the test. Well, some of them are going to pass the test when they're 10 years old because they're going to want the $100,000. Duh. And especially the poor people, the kids born to the shit parents are the ones that are going to have the highest motivation, where they have no motivation now, no incentive. They'll have the highest incentive. So instead of playing basketball and hoping to be an NBA star, they'll say, shit, I can own a house. I'm going to go learn how to do this stupid thing and pass this stupid test. That kind of thing. So you could argue that you have some kind of innovation that would fix a huge amount. You could say, look, I could fight for the right to die gracefully and say, look at the huge suffering I'm going to eliminate. It's going to be insane, the amount of good I'm going to do. And I can argue in the physics arguments, stuff. How can nobody else see it? I mean, it's so obvious. There's no fucking such thing as 1/2 mv squared. It's a fable. It's just a silly story they invented 350 years ago, and they never demonstrated it with a single fucking piece of evidence. And you're just saying, okay, yeah, I'm the only one saying it, so that's hubris, right? But I also, am I wrong? Is somebody going to prove I'm wrong? No, that ain't going to happen. So what's the trap of this idea that the fact is that sometimes confidence is legitimate, but how do you make the difference? How do you make the comparison? I guess the comparison is that most of the people who claim the power won't be accountable. Okay, so they won't be ridiculed, they won't be challenged, they won't take the test to prove their point, where obviously I do that thing. I do say, please test me.
The strands of philosophy to which I am attracted tend to take a different approach. They tend to be more epistemically humble.
Okay, so whatever that means, like religious, I guess. I don't know. What does that mean?
They tend to focus on the use of reason to whittle down the claims of reason as...
Okay, whittle down the claims of reason. What does that even mean, too? What are you talking about? You're using reason to whittle down your reason. So I guess that's more of that humble stuff, just saying, well, I can't possibly have the right answer, so I won't bother thinking anymore.
David Hume would say. In other words, a critical rationalism and not a constructive rationalism.
Okay, and constructive versus critical. So again, obviously all of this testing thing, that's the critical part. So yes, you should be skeptical. You should demand evidence. And so that's all perfectly reasonable. But what else is there? I mean, you make the arguments, okay, and they're either good arguments or crappy arguments. You're either relying on prejudice or bullshit. I mean, people have made arguments, right? I mean, Adolf Hitler, drew horns on Jews and said, see, evil. I mean, it wasn't much of a fucking argument. And somehow he was able to persuade people with it.
That tries to sort of say, this is the way the world is, tries to focus a little bit more on what the world isn't.
Right.
So that there is, philosophy is not solely the domain of the hubristic.
Right.
All right, so the hubris is in this idea that you could come up with a philosophy that says, okay, we're not going to have a silly fable. We're going to recognize there's a theory of evolution. There's a whole evolution of the brain. The brain has these functions of thinking and feeling, and we can understand that we certainly own the thinking territory because of language and stored information and going to high school and all of that crap. So we certainly own the thinking domain, but we don't own the feeling domain. And obviously the feeling domain is the whole thing we're playing for. We're playing for feelings, and we're using our thinking to enhance our feelings. So why wouldn't we apply that process not just to this individual, but to the system of feeling individuals? So duh. That's hubris to say I can rationally describe the game we're playing, what life is. Yeah, of course I can.
One of my favorite lines from your favorite book by Hayek, which we'll talk about, is something like, every political philosophy believes other people are ignorant, but liberals also believe that they themselves are ignorant, right?
Yeah.
And that's
All right, so I see gripes in here about the fact that I'm responding to the video. So you want me to just play the video? Is that the idea? I just play the video, just let him say a whole bunch of stuff, and then every now and then I'll take one sentence and respond to it. So instead of responding as I see, there's a concept, a concept, a concept, a concept. No, we shouldn't talk about any of the concepts being discussed. No, I should just play the video that you could link to. I could link to the video and just say, don't bother listening to anything I'm going to say. Just go watch this stupid pile of shit. Well, the whole point of me making the video is to say it's a pile of fucking shit. And I'm going to demonstrate to you how it's a pile of convoluted, mushy crap that doesn't have a goddamn fucking thing to do with anything called philosophizing. There's no philosophy in this shit, because there's no fucking description of anything real, any real relationship, right? Familiarly love, whatever that is. You're familiarly loved. With that bullshit. That's philosophy? Oh, you people just don't get the concept at all, do you? I am arguing with this. I am counterpointing to it. The point isn't to just play it and shut up and say, oh, yeah, well, good point, good point. No, the point is to listen and say, shitty premise, bad axiom, rubbish logic. That's the point, fucker. People are so stupid.
That's the kind of difference there. Many in Silicon Valley have also reacted to these dominant schools of philosophies in the way that you have. And so accelerationism was born. Tell us about that school and why you don't think that's a satisfactory response.
Right, right. So the other end of the extremes of hope and despair, accelerationism. And
all right, so doesn't this, as an idea, accelerationism, doesn't that deserve some sort of statement? And the statement could be, I could actually defend slavery. As bad as slavery was, I could make an argument defending it and saying that it got us to the future quicker. Okay? And it's just a fact that pulling excessive productivity out of people, destroying their lives in the present, and sucking all the value out of them, because it does create a long-term advantage. Because the sooner you can get to a future, okay, the sooner you get to penicillin or whatever, the better off you're going to be in the long term. And so, the more lives that will be improved, however you want to put that. So you're going to get this huge value gain because you got to the flying machine sooner, or you got to the computer sooner, or you got to something sooner because of the progress you aggressively grabbed out of the system by horrible exploitation. And obviously I wouldn't make a defense of it except to say that pragmatically you just have to recognize that, again, these are two choices. And the two choices you could argue are so bad that I'd rather just blow my brains out, right? Because you're basically to a choice where you're saying, do I rape my mother or do I rape my daughter? I mean, it's choices that you just say, fuck, I don't want, I'm not going to play. If the rules of playing is doing this, then fuck it, I don't want to play. So I guess in a way I would have to just advocate to, you can't enslave people for that advantage. But it's not a genuine truth, because the fact is that pragmatically it was worth it in this disgustingly, insidiously horrible way, it was worth it. I mean, the people die in wars. You have to argue it's worth it because some of the tyrants were so bad, the would-be tyrants. But it's insane to say it was worth it. But it's just unreasonable to say it wasn't. So you're stuck. You're stuck between two positions that are impossible to defend.
This school would have us unleash the development of AI as an end in itself. And that's a very important idea. You know, you and I think, probably hold technology to be a very powerful means by which we flourish as individuals. The accelerationist school confuses technology as a means with technology as the end, and views humans as being a kind of instrument.
Right. So the point would be, is again, this is the part where you're saying, well, shall it be developed recklessly and expediently, or shall it be developed carefully and cautiously? So is it okay if I do, like the genetic engineering? You know, they got a little sloppy, and so they end up with something that's, you know, in the long term, a big mistake because it requires, you know, the new corn requires 10 times the fertilizer or some kind of bullshit. So it really doesn't work in the end. And it ends up, you know, invading the natural system, and you can't weed it out once you weeded it in. You know, so you can make mistakes. And the argument is okay, sometimes the mistakes aren't enough of a problem to not take the expedient fast lane. But obviously, fast lane for nuclear power or fast lane for, you know, it doesn't work, because when there is a failure, the failure is such a mess that it, you know, it sucks up all value that you would have created. All the value of the industry is destroyed by the mistake.
In this trajectory that is sweeping, transcendent, inexorable, this technological trajectory, it draws a lot not from Bayesian thinking, but from thermodynamics. And so it wants to portray humans as a kind of variable in this thermodynamic equation, in this broad project to be.
So this is why the cosmic name, I guess, is they're going to mix in physics concepts in here and say that this is something about thermodynamics. It's just, you know, we're just little balls of energy, you know, and it's just maximize the number of balls of energy, you know, some kind of bullshit like that, when obviously that's not what we're playing for.
Able to harness and dissipate more energy, or to be able to climb the Kardashev scale, which means to harness not just the energy of the planet or the sun, but of the galaxy, you know, ratchet up more and more and more. These are not humanistic goals, and it's
so there is no harnessing of any of that. So again, it's just more nonsense. You know, we can only harness linear motion in many respects, and all of those things. The galaxy isn't linear motion.
very important, because one of the conclusions that the orthodox accelerationists reach is actually that we can and should hasten the time to passing the baton from humans
we invite the doom
to something
almost,
higher. Yeah, exactly. And I think with both schools, but certainly with accelerationism, you see a metaphysical impulse. You know, the
metaphysical impulse. So just again, none of this, you know, says much. You can argue, though, yeah, some ends require any means, and some ends say, well, the end isn't that good, so you have to be careful that your means isn't going to be, you know, complete and total catastrophe.
Religious impulse that humans have long had. You see it conserved, but redirected towards the thermodynamic God. In other words, they're both kind of eschatological. You know, in one case we die, and in one case we build something higher and better, and then our
whatever all that means. You know, so where in this conversation do we not die and we do something better and better, or, you know, what is he talking about?
Are transcended. And here's the upshot. is that both of these schools are very imaginative in a sense, right? You cannot fault them for being very imaginative about the possibilities here, whether it's paperclips or thermodynamic God. But on
a thermodynamic God or paperclip. So again, these analogies, metaphors, I'm, struggling to understand exactly what that point is. I mean, I guess my brain just said, well, maybe it's the Gandhi thing, right? That there's two ways you can live, knitting quilts and being productive in little way, a little circular way. Or you can, take on the bigger challenge of pushing the bigger wheel. But you're both pushing wheel. But again, I'd still argue that why push little wheels when there's big wheels to push? It's always better to push big wheels.
The one thing that is most needful, they have a lack of imagination. And what I mean by that is
playing for is the sense of accomplishment, right? Well, you might as well try to cure malaria. I mean, you might as well, the sense of accomplishment might as well be for getting the gold medal for something actually good, that benefits the future, benefits thriving, or whatever. They haven't used the word yet much, but later on it comes into the conversation. But anyway, to scale, you can do this huge scale thing. You can help one old lady across the street, or you can make a crosswalk machine that allows the old ladies to get across the street all by themselves. Yeah, you might as well do the fix it for all old ladies than fix it for one.
On what it means to be human, what the human good is.
Yeah.
One side views humans as a kind of aggregate of suffering or pleasure. In other words, we view the human good as the avoidance of pain.
Well, we know that that's what we're playing for. That's all our brain is devoted to, is we have our own sensations that we feel, and we're owned by them, and we will use our brain to scheme the best comfort outcome for ourselves. And the simple point is that, well, if you recognize that all the other things have the same mechanism inside of them, the same value of a feeling, then you know that, okay, it's obviously I can't make this comfortable and make that uncomfortable. That's not winning. I can't make the positive and then make the poopy negative. Because it undoes what I did. So I can't undo what I did. Making me happy and making somebody else sad is not win-win. I need win-win.
I have news for you. That is not the entirety of the human good. The other side abandons the idea of the human good entirely. In other words, it's a non-humanistic philosophy. And this is precisely where the issue is that we need a positive approach that is humanistic, that is grounded in the real goods, not reductionist to either Bayesian or thermodynamic effect, but really focused on the underlying human goods.
Right. If you are, as we are, investing in, for example, application level companies that are using AI, if you're worried about solving problems around.
So what is that even? So this smells like something, right? This guy's talking like he's just this far from being a Buddhist monk, and then he's talking about venture capital and investing in AI startups, whatever that would be. A recipe factory. What using AI to in some silly way to sell pizza. He'll invest in that company. The pizza selling company that uses AI to sell pizza. But it's just going to be something that's silly.
Autonomy, and we'll discuss what that means. You are implicitly making a bet and saying that there won't be a singularity or an AGI within the next 5 to 10 years, right?
You were saying that there is a human good that needs.
So why even why? So they're bringing this subject up of some kind of new kind of version of autocomplete, okay, that will be like us, that knows what feelings are and is balancing values, especially from a life experience. We have to balance the values from life experiences. So I can sample, and test my life. Okay, I can play with bugs, I can do this, I can do that, learn all kinds of things about what game I'm in, okay, and who's playing the game. But AI has no concept of any of that. And there's no reason to think it can ever have a concept of any of that, because it's never going to, it's not a thinking device. It is just autocomplete. I mean, the real argument is you have to learn by trial and error, by testing, like licking light sockets, by doing stuff and saying, that's what it is. I've sampled it. A synthetic intelligence can't sample it because it can't feel anything.
Needs to be jealously defended. That's what you're saying. And you're saying
Right.
that no one else will do it. We have to do it.
So you're agnostic to the speed of the AI development.
You're
kind of.
agnostic to the development scenarios. You're simply saying, whatever path we go down, this is a human good that I want to protect. And I must build in order to protect it.
Oh, let me push.
So whatever that is. So they have this ambiguous notion of autonomy, which means the right to be an asshole, or the freedom to be an asshole. And that somehow people shouldn't say, no, let's make being an asshole something we discourage, not encourage. So we coerce people not to be an asshole. Ooh, scary, scary. Yeah, no, that's not scary.
You in one last direction as a devil's advocate for these schools, which is, Brendan, you say that you are agnostic to the AI kind of development timeline, and the core focus is figuring out how AI, regardless of development timeline, can help these human goods flourish. And that's why, for example...
So we already know that it's helping, in the sense that, it's, again, relieving the burden or the obligation for us to do the research. So, testing a blueprint or testing a programming, code, or testing some other thing. It's tedious to do that testing. It's tedious to research all the case law and find out who said what when and all that kind of crap. Where, so it's expediting the process. So it's like saying the computer wasn't a life enhancer, and it's just kind of silly to say, because obviously we can create some other way to enslave people, but clearly we're requiring human beings to do less labor, and we can still maintain the same standard of existence. So we're just reducing the labor obligation. And we can take advantage of that, or we can just find some new way to enslave people. And so, so instead of liberating the working class because of the productivity, we've just said, well, we still want more productivity out of the working class, so let's enslave them to some other project. But it's just no denying that we have facilitated education. It's facilitated acquisition of knowledge and efficiency in function. I mean, airplanes still crash, but they crash a lot less. Just a fact.
The main questions we ask at Cosmos are around autonomy, which we'll talk about soon, decentralization, and truth-seeking. The devil's advocate is to...
Okay, so yes, the devil advocate. The argument is what you just said doesn't make any sense. Anarchy creates truth-seeking, and it just doesn't. All it creates is noise. And if you allow it to infiltrate a democracy, then it just creates ignorance. It just degrades the possibility. There's no possibility of achieving correct because you're just introducing incorrect.
Say, but if you think AGI is around the corner, then all of your energy should be focused on getting that right and aligning it, and it will be able to answer these questions much better than we.
All right, so the argument is the trolley question, and somehow the artificial general intelligence somehow will be smarter than us and be capable of answering the question better than us, when no, it'll do exactly the same thing we're going to do. It will just try to figure out, well, what exactly is the probability of the outcome for the people that I'm going to rescue versus the probability of the person I'm going to dispose of. And is there a reasonable trade-off to be made here? And that's all it's going to do. But it can't do it because it can't even know what the value of living is or the value of being destroyed is. It can't know any of that. And it certainly can't know it better than us, the conscious organism. So how can it know the conscious experience when it hasn't experienced it? How can it even know what the word torture means when it hasn't experienced some measure of torture? I mean, you can understand the impossibility of that, right? You know, it can't.
We can today. And so this is what Bohlstrom said when I was interviewing him, which is philosophy has a deadline. And there are certain philosophical questions that are more urgent if you take that AGI is around the corner kind of idea. So even though you claim you're agnostic, you're still not agnostic, right? Because if I told you, let's say I'm an oracle, I come from the future, in 2 years from now, AGI is going to come around the pipeline. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing now, right? These questions.
So right, and if you were an oracle and you knew that 2 years from now there's going to be a huge economic crisis and the stock prices are going to go down by 80% and all this wealth is going to be destroyed and all these people are going to try to be grabbing the pie and saying, I'm owed this, I own this, I own that, I want my money, blah, 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 blah. You know, then what would your, you know, obviously then, oh, yes, that's really important, but it's all about your predictive power. So you're going to claim you're an oracle and you're going to claim a certain outcome. Well, what's the point? Because, you know, frankly, you're not, and we have to answer all these questions, and there's never going to be an oracle to tell us the answer. How bad will global warming get, right? It's a real question. And, you know, especially in the context of 80% of human beings living within whatever 7 miles of the ocean. You know, yeah. What's going to happen when all the people living someplace they can't live anymore decide to move into your house?
Questions we can save for later. There's more pressing questions to resolve. Yes?
Wrong. Yeah, so I think, you know, for example, when we get into autonomy, that is a lived practice. In other words, that is something that humans do, right?
Right. So, you know, this is just this idea that we all have some kind of sense that we know what the fuck we're doing, right? We know what we're talking about. We're not talking shit. So everybody thinks they're not talking shit. But they all have, like the facts say, but you can't all be making these arguments that are all contradictory and all be telling the truth or all be having the truth. You all can't have the truth. It's just a fact. The God story of one thing directly contradicts the God story of the other guy. So you know there's a problem. And so the argument is how do we take all of this mush, all of these people with their autonomy saying, I know what I'm doing, all right, and pointing out how, no, you don't. Okay. Your philosophy isn't true because geology says so, or evolution says so, the fossils say so, something says so. And those are the arguments. And so that's what you're stuck doing here, is arguing these different positions. So these guys are pretending they're arguing for some kind of fair intellectual judgment, but no, they're arguing from their own biased position that somehow capitalists do something good in the world, when all they do is exploit for their own, to end up wasting resources, okay, to be a high maintenance pig. Yeah, and that's all they're doing. They're just figuring out the silliest way in the world to entertain you. They're just high maintenance brains, okay, and they produce nothing, okay, through their ownership, but blood loss. They just drain blood out of the corporation. They don't put value into it. The owners don't put value in, they just drain blood out.
And so the thought that we will build AGI and AGI will figure out autonomy is nonsensical. It's a category error. Like, it can't figure out something that must live within us. In other words, we must self-develop, we must self-direct. And so we
self-develop and self-direct, right? None of us are a self in the first place. I mean, obviously we're all constructions, reactions to the world that exists. I'm just a byproduct of the world you assholes created. So you'll create a world so goddamn stupid that something would wake up and say, hey, this is stupid. And so I was obligated to say this is stupid because you create a stupid world. So all I can do is say stupid, 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 insane, crazy, fuck this, too retarded. I didn't have a choice, you know, because the world smells of it. I can't evade the smell. It's right in my face. I recognize it and say, shit. I mean, it's not complicated. But I didn't do any of it. So what's the point of this bullshit? So again, it's just whether or not you've collected facts or whether you've collected fables. So obviously there's a ton of people that have just taken the shortcut and said, I'll just just tell me a fable, I'll accept it, I'll put the bumper sticker on my car, Jesus loves. There, I've done my thinking, okay, for my lifetime. I'm not going to go any further. And obviously there's other people who say, well, I know the truth is deeper than that mush.
Can use AGI instrumentally in that pursuit, but it is not a thing to be figured out. It's a practice. It's something to be lived.
So, you know, I wish this was just chess strategies, right? And you could just sit there and argue about chess strategies and say, okay, there's, you know, certain possibilities and they have limits. So you obviously can't just randomly move pieces and win. You know, you have to have some recognition that the bishops are worth more than the pawns and that this is worth more than that. And so without that acknowledgement, you can't just move pieces. So you have to, you know, so it's complicated, but it's a narrow question that an AI can solve, because it can run a million permutations and do all kinds of analysis of probabilities. We can't do that. So we have there's not even a competition. It's obvious that computers would become chess masters, and it's even more obvious that the future, they're going to be even better and better, and they're always going to be way better than any human.
And so, like, I also want to clarify that my agnosticism doesn't imply a withdrawal. In other words, we are building. Like, we're building the future we want to see.
Okay, well, this is a perfect segue.
So whatever that means. So he's agnostic regarding the progress of AI or AGI, and yet he's acknowledging that it's helpful. So it doesn't make much sense. Okay, so obviously you should argue that you wouldn't be agnostic. You'd say, okay, this is worth investing in, because obviously it will be a problem solver. It will be a very good thing for you to take your architectural design and allow an AI to analyze it and see where you might have made a mistake.
Let's talk about the risk that I don't think anyone in the Valley has really focused on in the way that we have, autonomy. What is the risk as well as opportunity as it relates to AI and human autonomy?
So when you think about the greatest goods in your life, you probably think about things like friends and family.
So this is all the subjective crap that obviously this guy, you know, being a monk and doing this stuff, this Buddhist crap and meditation and contemplation, obviously those aren't the only things in his life. I mean, obviously you have to be doing some kind of big picture crap to get yourself caught up in that mush. So what are you thinking about? You're thinking about how much I miss not having a family? I mean, you know, the whole idea of being devoted to being a brain devoted to thinking about these big ideas obviously isn't a brain that's going to be devoted to wiping their kid's snotty nose. So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to say what are the most important values to you as a big brain thinker, you know, or a big idea thinker. Well, big idea people aren't going to be raising kids.
And loved ones, you might think about the pursuit of...
I mean, all of the scientists, you know, of the history just prove the point. I mean, all the greatest scientists weren't distracted by family. Just a fact. I mean, like 80% kind of numbers were not distracted by a family. And if they did have a family, they weren't distracted by it in the sense they were never home.
Wisdom That's, I would say, one of your highest goods. Creative endeavor, that sort of thing, right?
Creative endeavor, you know, all this mush about, oh, I'm finger painting and it pleases me and blah, 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 blah. Who cares? So what? What does that have to do with anything? And yes, that's nice, you know, especially if it doesn't cost much. Yeah, great. But it's the high maintenance people that need to finger paint with a bunch of servants and other things that they're manipulating to create their picture. That's the danger. High maintenance, whether based on, you know, the lowest lifestyle versus the highest lifestyle of just creating a mess, you know, the criminal, very high maintenance, and the, you know, the silly people, you know, that need Rolls Royces and all that kind of crap.
It's actually eating, but wisdom is number 2.
Yeah, eating, exactly. That would, I would say, be one of the lowest that is necessary for the highest. So this is an interesting point about how the lowest things in us are needed for the highest.
Okay, so the highest things are the lowest things, frankly, for most people. So again, pretend, but if I was to analyze my life, especially my immature life, up to 40 or so, the obsession was, you know, something as crude as eating in terms of whatever, fucking or relationship or some kind of thing called love, chasing that. And so how much time did I devote to imagining and wishing and hoping and, you know, jerking off, you know, versus thinking about physics or thinking about social dynamics or thinking about the right to die or some other kind of, yeah, come on, there's no contest. My brain was owned by my desire. It wasn't owned my crudest desires. And that's most people. Most people are just thinking about how they can seduce their neighbor or how they can get away with this or how they can, you know, fuck that, how they can, and that's it. Okay, the brain isn't scheming anything bigger than almost something as stupid as, you know, what's for dinner.
As well. But these kinds of goods, what's common to them, whatever you hold to be your highest goods, is that they cannot be.
So again, the highest goods are, what do you think that people are after? You know, I want to be the world champion. I want to be the winner. I want to gain the $1 million. I want the trophy. I want, and all the wants are silly, trivial shit wants. People don't want to be a great person. You know, they just want the trappings of greatness.
Obtained on a platter. You know, AI can't give
except for eating. Yeah.
Except for eating, which I'll hold to the side.
We'll bucket, yeah.
And they have to be attained as the result of some kind of self-motivated striving. In other words, you had to get out there. You had to try things. You had to...
All right, whatever, the self-motivated again. There's just no self to motivate. There's just reactions. So you're in a circumstance and you react. If you're in quicksand, you react one way. If you're in cold water, you react a different way. You're just reacting to the circumstance you find yourself in, and that's all life is made out of, is your reaction to the action the world creates, or the world you've been exposed to creates. But that's all there. There's just, you know, self-motivated bullshit. You have to understand it before you can be motivated by it.
Enjoy it, you had to experience it, you had to get hurt by it. Being able to discover and develop one's gifts, being able to deliberate, using read.
All right, so these are all code words. One's gifts. You know, there's such a gifty thing. Everybody has a gift of some kind, and you're going to develop your gift, whatever the fuck that is. More horse shit. What we all have is, you know, stinky poo.
And to line up our actions and be able to pursue them. So this deliberative capacity for self-direction, okay, is, I think, the thing I want to call everyone's attention to. This is autonomy. And without this self-direction, we cease to live fully human lives.
All right, so this is like saying that the asshole playing his music way too loud, driving way too fast, throwing garbage out his window, needs the liberty to be self-directed and motivated by his whatever that is, right? I mean, you have to argue that some people are so overt in it that they're aggressively doing it on purpose. Like they're aggressively saying, I wish to be obnoxious. I wish to irritate you because that gives me power. So I'll take the muffler off my motorcycle and I'll play the music as loud as I fucking goddamn can because I want you to notice I exist and I want to rub my ass in your face. And that's what motivates them. That's their passion, okay, is to stick their ass in your face. Fuck those guys, right? So that's the simple point. Well, I don't need these self-motivated fucking morons, okay? These people aren't doing anything useful. Their disappearance would be applauded. There would be no one weeping.
Act in the world, but it isn't really our life to live. And so I say this all so far at the level of the individual. Like, the other piece of it is that it's very important as a society.
All right, right. So he just said it's not our life to live. That would be the more rational way to say that is it's not a single player game, okay? It's a multiplayer game. And what happens to all the other players is just as significant and real as what happens to you as a player. And all you want out of this stupid game you're playing is to be rewarded for doing good plays and be punished for doing bad plays.
Particularly a democratic society, one that self-governs. And this is because we depend on individuals who...
Okay, so again, somehow democracy is self-government, whatever that means, when we know what democracy is lowest common denominator stupid. So you end up electing somebody because they're pretty, not because they have an idea, okay? Or you elect somebody because of, a bunch of propaganda about what we're fighting for and what we're fighting against. But you can't even describe what our democracy is now, right? Because it is just idiocracy because there's nothing to vote for and there's morons voting. So that's really not going to go anywhere. That kind of democracy nobody needs. I mean, it's almost like you couldn't fail to just pick a random person and do better than the compromise between insane and crazy. Giant douche and shit sandwich. Well, almost any human is better than those two. That combination.
Who can form views, who can act on those views, who can self-govern. Without that, we lose the...
Right. So this self-governing thing doesn't make any sense because it has to be something that your meme engine has to drive. You have to basically instruct people what it is to be a decent human being and what the rules are. And the fact that you know what offensive is, right? You know how, if somebody's doing something and they're making some putrid smell and if you're sitting on your back deck just wanting to have a nice cup of coffee, fuck that shit, right? So you can understand what it is to trespass and offend, and you just say, well, I just won't bother doing that, right? I won't be a trespasser and an offender. And that's almost a simple principle. You're just saying that, yeah, it's all about fences in a sense. I mean, your liberty stops where somebody else's property begins kind of thing. That's not, those ideas can be consolidated in very simple principles. And instead, this guy's talking around that simple principle. That chaos doesn't create that. Anarchy doesn't create that. It just doesn't. You need like when time stopped or whatever that stupid old movie is with the giant robot. You need the giant robot, okay, to force the civilized behavior.
The greatest bulwark against despotism.
Right. So draw it out practically. How
saying chaos and random horse shit is somehow a great protection against mistakes when, of course it isn't. It's exactly how you create garbage and inefficiency. If you want inefficiency, this is how you create it, is by saying people are allowed to be assholes.
An AI wave can harm or accelerate us being autonomous agents.
Okay, so the phrase that I would stick in your mind is autocomplete for life. What I mean by that is we use AI systems, we obtain the incremental convenience from them, where we get not just the next word in the sentence, that's what everyone's familiar with autocomplete, but also the next decision, the next, job recommendation, the next friend, the next relationship, the next purpose. In other words, we can sort of ladder up what AI can do for us. And it feels very harmless. It feels convenient and probably useful. But
probably no. I mean, it just is, okay? Because it's doing all of the work that you can't even do. So why wouldn't it be great to, if the AI could ask somebody 500 questions, and it has a profile of everybody, and it throws it in the computer and says, yeah, obviously the likelihood of a mismatch goes way the fuck down. So, it's not that complicated. I mean, you're basically just saying that you're going to just, manufacture what you want, because you're going to select it out of what is.
But it adds up. It causes a kind of erosion of choice. When we offload, we can see at the level of fMRI, but certainly we all recognize this in our lived experience, that we atrophy. In other words,
so this whole idea that using calculators means that we can't do math anymore. Well, everybody knows that's not really true. And it just means that, well, okay, you can let go of understanding exactly how to do your, upside down fractions and multiplying and something. You can lose some pieces of it, and you don't have to waste your neurons on that anymore. So there's just a huge advantage. And the fact is your dependency is rather reliable because the calculator is now 4 cents worth of technology. It's nothing. And it's so reliable and so dependable that you got nothing to fear in the sense that, well, what if I have to go back? Well, you know how to go back, so it's not that, it's not like you're going to have it, it's impossible to go back to, instead of riding the electric bicycle, pedaling a real bicycle. Of course, it's easy to go back. It's just kind of unpleasant.
We habitually offload in a way that causes us to then lose the skill. You see this, like the fMRI stuff is like, if you do a lot of speed reading and not a lot of deep reading, you lose some of the ability to do that, or if you do a lot of calculator-based arithmetic, you lose the ability to do that. Now, I think an important point has to be made, like, why is this not just another version of?
But it's like saying typing. It got so much faster when you didn't have to put a whole bunch of energy, you didn't have to do the mechanical work of throwing the damn thing at the paper, right? And instead the machine did it for you. I mean, the speed doubled, tripled, so I mean, the fact is learning how to hit those little buttons quickly. You can create efficiencies that are like on the 100-fold kind of level in terms of, something that would have taken 5 hours takes 5 fucking minutes. I mean, the advantages are gigantic. So of course you don't look at it with cynicism and say, oh, what am I sacrificing? I'm going to lose the capacity to know what a multiplication table is. No, I'm not going to lose the capacity to know what it is. I'm just going to have to not worry about, oh yeah, well, I don't have to memorize it perfectly anymore. I can forget parts of it.
That, right? Google Maps, right? I can't drive very well without Google Maps. You're probably the same. Actually, you live in New York, so you probably can't drive, period. So then the next question becomes, why is AI in particular a problem for this? Because this is
so again, it's just this whole idea that obviously in the past it was a real pain in the ass. Maps were a pain in the ass. You had to have 43 maps in your glove compartment. So you had to find the right map, and then it was 5 years old or something, and so there was some new highway that you didn't even know existed that wasn't on the fucking map. So yeah, it was a big pain in the ass. So what's the argument? And the fact that you could go back to it tomorrow, we could just eliminate all of that and say you have to start reading maps again. What, we can't read maps? Of course we can. So again, this doesn't make any sense as an argument that we're sacrificing some functionality, that we're somehow becoming like we actually cut our legs off and, and made this technology our legs. We never cut our legs off, okay? These augmentations are superfluous to the inner function. You still have all of those functions. You're just augmenting them. You're just putting on the glove to protect your hand. Your hand is still there. You can take the glove off and use your hand. I mean, these tools are they're so far from replacing our functionality. They're just augmenting our functionality. They're enhancing our functionality.
Problem for all technology, books and memory, right? Like driving and being able to ride a horse. Yeah. What's special about
Well,
AI?
actually, I think before we even talk about that, I framed it as a problem, but it's actually a beautiful thing, right? And you and I have talked about the quote from Alfred North Whitehead, that the measure of civilizational progress is the number of important operations of thought we can perform without thinking about them.
Oh, I mean, whatever that mush is. But Whitehead was a real loop-de-doo nutter. So he's a Gaia kind of bullshit, you know, free willer, all kinds of nonsense comes out of Whitehead. So, you know, that's just religion almost. As soon as somebody says Whitehead, you're just saying, oh, the most preposterous religious, you know, this is science disguised as religion or whatever. Religion disguised as science. So yes, no, there's no value anywhere in it. It's all human-centric, you know, singularity bullshit. Let's see. I just thought I would read some of these comments, see if there's anything. See how if there's anything relevant. So it's just two morons talking. Okay, sorry, morons. I mean idiots. I mean chatters. Okay, Idiocracy was a documentary. Yeah, but it's still a concept. Okay, and the concept is revealed. I mean, the fact is Idiocracy, the movie, predicted exactly what pretty much happened, right? I mean, it's professional wrestler Donald Trump. I mean, what's the difference? Same fucking thing. I mean, you have these people that are basically bank robbers running for, you know, and they convicted. You know, they stole candy from babies. They, you know, raped women. They did all kinds, and they still run, because it's just about, you know, who's on my side. If he's on my side, I don't care how big a criminal he is. I mean, it's hilarious. Let's see, what happened to handwriting? I don't know what that is. Last of the Mohicans. Who cares? What is he talking about? Girls forgot numbers ever since the call phones. Well, who knows what that is. All right, never mind. Sorry. Reading the chat. Jesus. Who thought that was a good idea? Chat. Yeah. I mean, there should be penalties. I mean, there should be like little electrodes tied to your, you know, nuts. And so every time you chat stupid, then people could vote to electrocute you. You know, when you don't do it right, it should be reward and punishment. You know, relevant on the subject, rewarded. Irrelevant, drivelly nonsense, smegma. You know, rubbing your smegma in the chat. Yeah, fuck that.
Right. It's a brilliant, brilliant quote. There are examples that abound. My favorite of this is Max Verstappen, the Formula One driver. He's kind of a prodigy, you know, special driver. And when it's raining on the course, he can talk to his pit wall, his pit crew. And it's because he has made it autonomic.
Yeah.
He has done it so many times that he can actually think about.
Yeah, like none of the other drivers have driven as much. I mean, it's just kind of a funny, you know. But whatever, this glorification of the greatest in the world and how the greatest in the world are, you know, you know, some kind of horse shit. And it's like, okay, some of that's true. Okay, idiot servant kind of stuff, right? You know, so what? I mean, it's just amazing what we glorify. So again, we're going to have a conversation about human acquisition, and it'll have something to do with some asshole who can, you know, speed around a racetrack or navigate a racetrack better than the other assholes. I mean, this is the contest for a great, you know, human achievement. hilarious. I mean, really don't have a single thing, right? All of this sport crap is just such absolute shit. And these two guys are talking, and they know what they should be talking about is the biggest crisis is that being smart, acquiring knowledge, doing logic and reasoning with what we can understand about our reality has no value to the human race. And, you know, throwing a baseball the fastest or some other hitting it the furthest is of huge value. And that ought to be the whole signal that this whole experiment is a gigantic failure because most people value absolute shit.
About strategy, he's talking about the tires.
Yeah.
You know, he's going 220 miles
In
an
fact,
hour.
I remember one of the races, I'm a big F1 fan. He was watching the other drivers like on the Jumbotron and commenting.
And so I have to admit, I watched auto racing some when I was a kid. And the simple truth is I watched it because I wanted to see I wanted to see mayhem. I wanted to see horror. As bad as that, but that's it. The action wasn't the success. It was I wanted to see failure. And, you know, and that's why I stopped eventually, is because I said, what the fuck am I doing? And then it was just idol worship. You know, some guy, you know, had a thing, a little bit of charisma, like A.J. Foyt or something. And so, yeah, I was a big fan. And so, yeah, I wanted him to win. So I wanted the other people to lose. You know, and so you're like wishing their car into, you know, ooh, I wish that guy would crash. Yeah, you know, this isn't fucking human actualization. This isn't fucking anything like being I'm living the good life. I'm thriving watching my auto racing. No, you're not thriving, okay, watching these silly soap operas, you know, and you know, rooting for your home team. That is not thriving. That's failing dismally.
On their races.
I mean, it's almost like he's just like having a strategy thought while everyone else is clinging on at 5Gs or whatever they drive at. And so, anyway, so it's a beautiful thing. It's how we build the edifice of civilization. It's how we do the higher things. It's great. So it's a bit of a paradox, right? On the one hand, it's great. On the other hand, it's problematic.
I don't know what that is. But just using this as an analogy of something that should be admirable is just hilarious. You know, in the context of talking about what terrifying prospects, you know, the things that are destroying civilization. And this is the example of what destroys civilization, is this insane misinvestment, this investment in absolute crap, you know, versus investment in encouraging humans to be the best human they can be.
Okay, so now we set sort of the contours. So coming back to the key question of why does AI, why is that a thing?
Special case, yeah.
Special case, yeah. So one is you have to think about what it is that you are offloading and thus potentially eroding. And in the case of calculators, it's calculation. In the case of maps, it's like positioning in space. Yeah, navigation, that's in the case of writing, that's essentially memory, right? So,
all right, so this is just a lie. Some of you lose your memory. And again, the writing is tedious and annoying. And what you really want to do is just expedite the, like I said, the Grammarly thing. This isn't, like I said, it doesn't destroy your understanding of grammar. It's just expediting a process where you would have to waste a bunch of time saying, oh, if I reverse those two phrases and put a colon, then it reads better. And, you know, so you're not losing any skill. You're just saying, I now don't have to waste 10 hours fixing the grammar.
Primarily memory. And so these are kinds of categories of things. Never before has it been possible to offload and therefore atrophy our core practical wisdom, or our core deliberation, I should say, that leads to a kind of wisdom.
All right, so there's just absolutely no evidence that in any way you lose the capacity to be a philosopher by soliciting the opinions of AI. So again, it's just zero threat. And the only people who are using AI who can't think, and they need AI, you know, it's not just enhancing, but they can't do it without it, okay, Well, that's a dependency, but whose fault is that? They didn't have the skill in the first place. They didn't atrophy something. They never had the skill in the first place. They couldn't do any analysis because they never acquired information to do the analysis. They never watched the physics lecture, so obviously they can't know anything about the physics, right? But if I watch the physics lectures and I know something about the physics and then I consult an AI to get an opinion on physics, I'm not going to lose what I know. Shit. It's just too stupid. I mean, the premise is just so false.
So, you know, now you are talking about something that is necessary to self-direct, that is necessary for moral judgment, right? It is necessary for us to decide what is good for us. And so it's a different kind of thing that gets off.
So none of that's true. AI isn't doing any of that. So it's just such a lie to say that somehow people can't make any decisions, you know, that they're asking the AI. They're only asking for the better judgment that they don't have the time to go look up. I mean, again, it's not that complicated. You want to know how many gas stations are within 5 miles of you? Well, yeah, you could do this tedious driving around and counting them, or you could just ask this device that already knows the answer and can give it to you. So what's, you know, how are you threatening your own capacity to find the answer the hard way by getting it the easy way? You're not. You're just saying, why should I ever do it the hard way when I can do it the easy way?
The other question you have to ask, okay, now that we've pinpointed that this is a very precious thing that we should be careful to not offload, then you have to look at how pervasive is it likely to be. And AI is clearly something that can scale. It's clearly something that can be hyper-personalized. Already, 20% of human life is mediated by algorithms. Human waking life is mediated by algorithms. Social.
Oh, so whatever that means, you know, which, you know, obviously this statistic probably means nothing, you know. But yes, the fact that some machine code, some programming is provided some expedited process like scanning your ticket, yeah, reading the barcode, yeah. And again, all of that is hugely efficient. So why should that threaten me in some way?
Media algorithms, yeah. Right.
Social media algorithmic feeds, not just LLMs, but AI that determines or guides or shapes what information.
Yeah, and all that's just corporate. So again, what is that again? So the corporation knows what's good for us. I mean, we gave it all the way to these corporations, and somehow the corporations are so much better than the government. Bullshit they are.
And reaches your mind, what thoughts therefore form within them. And so the scale is already very significant, but what that means is that you might not encounter different possibilities. In other words, you might not realize that there's something else out there.
Like what? So again, it's just this idea of do you have a dishwashing machine, or do you have to wash the dishes? You know, yeah, it's you know, being somebody has to wash their clothes, you know, in a bucket with a plunger, you know, and actually has to do all the physical labor. Yeah, you'd say, yeah, okay, it's a lot nicer when you just dump it in the machine and press the button. And there really isn't any greater enjoyment, you know, in experiencing doing the hard work. But you can just rationalize it and say, well, I'm saving the money, okay, and I'm getting exercise. So, and I'm doing the environment a favor. So, yeah, okay, I'll vote for the tedious, you know, work of doing it myself versus allowing the technology to do it for me. So we can always make the choice. We can always slide back and say, I'll do it my way. You know, every now and then I pick up a pencil and actually write with a pencil. Weird.
If you have been sort of epistemically narrowed to a high degree. I think another mechanism that's important is how do you sort of pull out, how do you recover, right? In the case of calculators, you can just do kind of the inverse operation and check it. In the case of a lot of things AI does for us, it's very hard to check. And it seems authoritative.
Well, you could have AI check the AI, so, not too, problematic. And again, it's all about what you've called authorities. So, I mean, eventually, I guess they'll have, Democratic Party AI and Republican Party AI. We'll have conservative versus liberal AIs or something. And, they'll bend, the truth to those interests. But it's always going to be a corporate AI. And that's the other part that's a little spooky, is it's all going to be provided by the not evil Google. Fuck that.
It can answer questions like, what is justice? Like, no one knows, but you give us that kind of question. And
right, and so the AI doesn't know either, and so all it's going to do is read Hume and read this and read that and read this and read that, and so it's going to take those resources and compile a majority opinion and just gurgitate that at you.
If AI seems authoritative and fast, the computational cost of checking it is very high. We don't check it. This is a common automation issue. We don't check it. So that fact, combined with the narrowing, destroys the possibility of error correction in the long term.
So again, the very thing AI is really good at is error correction. So the idea, like I said, if I can put a plan in front of it, a blueprint, it can find an error in it. I can put a bunch of mathematics into it. It can find the error. So I mean, I'm just saying that this is what it's really good at, is finding defects or inconsistencies with rules. Something that's governed by rules. It can see whether something is missing something based on the rules. So it's very good at error checking.
So let me summarize the conversation so far for our audience, which is that
okay. Babble, and then we babbled, and then babble, and then mush, babble.
Technology, as they give you a superpower with their left hand, takes something away through dependence.
Yes, well, this is just, you go back to Inherit the Wind and Spencer Tracy making this argument that you have to pay for everything. You have air travel, but then you have smoke and, billowing poison in your atmosphere, and the birds are choked, and this happens. Yeah, so you always pay for everything. And that's the whole point we're arguing about, is how much should we pay for whatever it is we're pursuing. And if we're... and is there any way to ever do this thriving thing when you're slated to be a murder victim? You will be obligated to play the role of the murder victim. Is that thriving?
It's on the right hand. This trade-off is worth it if what is taken away isn't so central. What makes AI special, your view is, it sounds like, is that because it's the most, it's a technology that's the most similar to humans, that it can potentially take away practical deliberation.
So it has no similarity to being a human, in the sense that it doesn't feel and it doesn't function in some sort of mechanical way. And all it's doing that's something like a human is looking at a puzzle and saying, how do I put the puzzle together? And AI is really good at it, and we really suck at it. So yeah, that's the funny part. It does it better. So most puzzles, it will find the solution to it much quicker than we can find the solution. But if the puzzle is, what's the meaning of life, it has no clue. It's not going to have anything useful to say, because all it's going to reference is the authorities, and the authorities are just full of religious babble.
So it's the thing that you lose. It's, practical reason versus navigation versus calculations versus memory, as well as the scope.
All right, so I don't think they've made a very good case that there's some high risk of us atrophying, okay, by becoming dependent on computers. So that we're going to lose some kind of some part of the integrity of our ability to think and live, when all it can really do is create huge enhancements. it's going to make the artwork better. It's going to make this better. It's going to make everything better. It only makes it more precise. There's more resolution. There's more pixels. There's more information. So it expands the world so much more than it contracts it. I mean, you know, as much as I don't like Hubble telescope imagery being used to defend all kinds of wacky shit, the fact is that it takes really broken data, a little missing, all kinds of stuff that's pretty shitty information, and it turns it into a very high resolution, high probability of accuracy image. Now, even though it has all kinds of artifacts in it that, you know, people don't want to talk about, but the fact is, you know, the technology can make it possible for us to see things we couldn't see, okay, without it. And that's just that's an advantage. You can never say, oh, there's a threat. Well, yeah, the threat is that you'll be deceived into thinking it's completely accurate, okay, or impossible that it could make a mistake, or that it could have aberration in it. You know, that's the mistake to make, is to trust it too much.
With which you lose it, because it can be embedded in everything. That's what makes this extremely dangerous.
And
okay, so there's no extreme danger here. So I don't think they've made any argument that there's any extreme danger. So there's just, you know, we're whatever. How many minutes is it? 26 minutes in, and you have this preposterous title, and, you know, something terrifying, and then they're saying extreme danger, but they haven't made any case for what the danger is. What's the threat? They haven't even described anything called a programmer or, you know, somebody behind the algorithm. And they don't, in the whole conversation, talk about who's behind the algorithm. Who's deciding what an authority is? Who's deciding what papers should be given a higher ranking?
the fact that it is hard to recover, because the way you might audit that, the way you might pull it out, is through use of the very same thing that it atrophies.
I see.
For example.
Right. And so, obviously...
So again, there's no atrophy, there's no... This is just saying that somehow your hand atrophies when you put the glove on it, and it doesn't.
I imagine people are going to be curious about the solution. What do we do about this? But before we go there, I want to better understand the concern by giving you a thought experiment. Okay, and I call this thought experiment the omniscient autocomplete. So let's say whatever practical question it gives you, it'll always give you the best answer for you to do. Should I marry Sally? Should I marry Susan? And you know that it's the best because historically it's been verified. Okay, so you run back tests, it always gives the right answer, and every little thing that you've tested and that your friends have tested, it always seems to have given you the right answer. So you're pretty confident empirically that it's, it gives you always the right practical answer. How would...
The fact is that it can produce answers faster and more reliably than you can, okay? Because you can't compile all of the evidence regarding how many gas stations are within 5 miles of your house. You can't compile it. You can't seek, you can't look through a database. You can't do any of that. It can, and it can provide the information. So yes, there's a huge volume of questions it can answer faster and better than you can. Just an absolute fact. But this idea that you could, the idea that you would trust this mechanism, okay, to answer some question about whether you should jump on the grenade or not, that would be the stupid part, is to, well, it's just like the self-driving car. It's a nice idea that it's right 98.6% of the time, but you don't want to be the guy walking on the street when the 0.2 stuff happens, the 2.4% of the time happens. You don't want somebody else's liberty to be lazy to sit there and get you run over.
Do you use this system?
I want to accept the thought experiment, but first I want to understand, is it omniscient through time? Like, is it an oracle that, so like in the middle of the way through an NBA season, we don't know who wins the championship, right? Does this omniscient oracle?
So the point will be, his answer is just going to be no. It's just a very good probability. It'll answer the probabilities for you. So it's like a card counter in a game of cards. It's doing the card counting. It can't guarantee that the next card is going to be a jack. It's just telling you, well, there's a 73% chance, okay, that the next card is going to be a jack.
We'll know that. And I raise this because there is a class of knowledge that can only be, that's not sort of like computationally reducible. It's something that only is generated through actually playing out the thing, you know?
Right.
And this is, for example, how markets function is we, you know, across many different variables, we generate knowledge.
Right.
So he's talking about markets generating knowledge, and so this is just such, this is such veiled philosophy. But you're just saying these two guys have obviously are connected, okay, to interests, okay, that aren't the common man. Let's just say that this is, if you call this think tankery, this is think tankery financed by a political position.
It's knowledge that is known to no one because it isn't even in existence in the world.
So let's say that it's not omniscient through time. But let's say, let me put it this way. The wisest human ever, let's say Socrates, it would make the decision that they would make. Like given imperfect information, date Sally, date Susan. We don't know if Sally or Susan has cancer, but given all the information, it makes like the best possible answer. Yeah.
The reason I ask the question is because there is a mode of operation that is suitable to
So I would argue that obviously the best human can't even do it. So it just, again, you're just saying this is a piece of technology can't be compared to some human accomplishments. Like saying a human being can jump 7 feet high. This thing can jump 596 million miles high. So what's, there's no point in comparison. At this one task, it's far outstrips any capacity the human has. So again, at card counting, for example, this thing can do it so much more reliably and better than any human could ever do it.
exploiting knowledge then known.
Yeah.
In other words, like kind of what an authoritarian government does, right? There is quite another that is suited to the maximal generation of knowledge.
Right.
And for things that are not known and won't be known except by sort of playing it out.
Right.
And so if you lean too hard on the former, on the exploitation of the knowledge then known, you kind of deplete the stock, right?
Right.
You cease to generate the new.
Well, whatever. So there's no such thing as an oracle, and all we can base our existence on is probabilities and the best. What's the right term? You're just saying that there's over time there's a likelihood of a positive outcome, and over time you can figure out that yes, this investment will always mean you'll always profit if you do this. When it's above 60%, yes, you're guaranteed that in the future you'll just keep gaining and gaining. All right, and if you're below that 40%, that you have the opposite curve where you're guaranteed failure. And that's what it's doing for you. It's giving you the ability to see the guaranteed failure and the guaranteed win. And then, all the stuff in between 40 and 60 is still 50-50 or still vague. So it's not going to help you much. But it certainly makes the extremes obvious. It makes complete failure preventable, and it makes a guaranteed some portion of win, some profit, guaranteeable.
And I would argue that the real goal from the consequentialist frame is we should want systems that can allow the anonymous individual to achieve his or her unknown ends. And if we want...
So anonymous individual achieve their unknown ends. It's just bullshit, just nonsense. Because we know that's just noise. That's just saying that chaos works. That somehow a chaotic answer is better than this engineered knowledge. It's just absolute nonsense. Asshole doesn't improve the human pie, okay? It just doesn't.
Want to do that, it is not by simply exploiting the knowledge of the unknown. It is by maximally enticing the use of knowledge.
Right, but the AI could tell you to do that. So the AI could say, you know, given what you know now about Sally and Susan, go with Susan, but be open to it, and then ask you questions while you're dating Susan. You know, every time you ask it a question, it'll come out with the best kind of practical deliberation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you use it? Would you have like a pair of VR goggles such that it always tells you what to do?
Yeah.
Would you never consult it? Would you consult it occasionally?
So
all these trade-offs, though, it won't be able to answer, right? It'll say there's a 20% chance Susan will weigh, 100 pounds more in 3 years, and there's a 40% chance that Jane or whatever, is going to have some sort of vaginal problem of some kind, and blah 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 blah, and endometriosis, and have to be hacked up and whatever, Well, now, how do I make my choice? I don't want either one of these things. Do I have a third choice? Because, these two are already broken. So, it's not really going to help you that much, I think, in that kind of a circumstance, except in the obvious ones, where, her grandmother, her mother, her, aunt, they're all 300 pounds. Well, okay, you can figure out that it might not be going your way.
I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I
Ooh, scary, right? And so he's going to try to engineer his kids, and it's just so funny because, that never works. And so this whole idea of I'm going to make them self-actualizing mega monster machines, in the Nietzschean tradition. And, that's doomed to failure in my, just for the obvious reason that the more you know, there's the more you wish you didn't know, okay? Because the truth isn't a great story. It doesn't just get, richer and more interesting. No, it gets more frightening and terrifying.
of am raising them with the idea that this world is the world in which they are entering.
Right.
Okay. And so what I've done is on the...
I'm not wishing to imply that fat women, okay, is a problem. I'm just saying that from my perspective, okay, that would be a... it's not that it's a non-starter, but I mean, that's kind of ruins the fun for me. Now, obviously for other people, it's somehow fascinating and fantastic. So it's certainly subjective sexual preference, blah, blah, blah. So I don't mean to imply that my subjective standards are objective standards. They're not. I guess you could argue there's a health interest, that's objective.
On one hand, try to utilize that oracle to develop their skills. So the telos is a self-development one. And so my daughter will do math that AI could trivially answer, but she will still do it. So AI poses questions and she does the math. And this works pretty well. But then I time delimit that very strictly. And this is through a curriculum at Alpha School, which based in Austin. So there's a time delimiting. Then for the remainder of the day...
So they're doing infomercials in this thing for this AI school thingy, whatever it was, Alpha something or other, all these code names, for some online school thingy of some kind where you only do two hours of schoolwork a day or something, and you gain so much more, and it's so much more powerful. And so, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, these are people that are going to create this very rich home environment. So school isn't going to end with school. They're going to get it at home too. But the point is that the education process, you can't get to the conclusion. You can't just say to the 5-year-old, this is how life works, okay? You're just a cog, a pawn. You're going to get, seduced by all kinds of impulses, and you're going to make all kinds of mistakes. Your whole life's going to turn to shit. You're going to die of syphilis. You can't do that. So you have to pretend that there's some purpose to all of this little incremental enhancement of your capacity to understand relationships and, distances between things and where things are located and what kind of people live here and what kind of, and all this bullshit you have to learn. And all of it is bullshit in the end, because it's not going to help you at all in dealing with the simple fact that your best friend, your dog, is horribly dying. And then once that happens a few times, you'll get the message. Life sucks.
There is an experiential learning component that is completely without this oracle. In other words, she goes outside, she tries things in the world, she learns to ride a bike for 5 miles without stopping, she climbs a rock wall, she speaks in front of...
Oh, the kid is just such a magnificent 5 years old, and it's got speaking engagements. Oh, God, people are so pathetic.
100 people. Okay, so there's a non-oracle component. There can be light consultation for, like, if I want to learn how to garden, how do I do that? That's a consultation that I would rely on the oracle to tell me how to do. The last component...
Yeah, but you can't just tell you how to do it. That's like somebody, you know, telling you physics or telling you... You just can't. It's this whole pile of stuff that you have to understand the conceptual relationships between things, and you can't just tell it in a sentence or a phrase. You have to see some of it.
Is then stimulating through probably human discussion the kind of characteristics and habits of mind that are necessary to retain self-direction in a world like that.
Yes, it is live. Disappointingly, there's nothing to interact with in the comments, okay? I mean, most of it is just completely unrelated gibberish typed by people, okay? So, yeah, I don't know what to say. Get your Islam money. Get gray scabs. Find no food to buy. I mean, this is just... Sorry. Interacting with other humans is not fruitful.
Because my biggest concern would not be correctness. Correctness is solved. But it would be the concern around enfeeblement, around not living a full human life because...
Right, so in whatever this full human life part is, right? And I'm just arguing that the fuller your life is, that is, the more you know, the more you're going to wish you didn't know. Because, frankly, it's all scary. So the more you know about disease pathogens and threats and this and that, oh, yeah, it's like almost everything becomes, you know, you have to boil everything, you have to sanitize everything, you have to do this, you have to do that, because they're all threats, they're all real. Some of them low probability, but you're just basically saying, I don't want scarlet fever, so yeah, it's we got to pour Clorox on everything. And, you know, just the very fact that you acknowledge your own risk, the fact that at any moment of fucking, you know, hemorrhage, some fucking artery can explode and you can be completely fucked. I woke up one day with a, you know, having a stroke. You know, I go to bed a little bit fucked up, I wake up and, you know, half my body doesn't work anymore. I mean, those are the kind of experiences that are just such a kick in the face and just basically saying you are totally vulnerable and you have no control and, you know, this could get really bad. This could go, you know, this could go sideways really bad, really fast, and you have no power. Well, that just absolutely destroys brain function. It just says to it, oh, just fuck, you're doomed. Fuck this. Fuck thinking, fuck bothering, for what? I'm just sitting here waiting for my murder. You know, what the fuck is that? I don't want to be sitting around waiting to be murdered. So what the fuck good is that? I mean, can't you figure out what the fuck I'm puffing, for fuck's sake? I mean, this is just so moronic. I'm addicted to nicotine, retard. That's why vaping was invented, was basically for nicotine addicts, okay? Yeah, the fact that other people are vaping other shit, fine, that's their business. But fuck, this isn't complicated. Oh, shit. Jesus Christ. You know, anyway, sorry. Just, I shouldn't interact with people. They're just annoying. I mean, really, it's such a low value thing to do. It's just always more irritating than anything.
I no longer self-direct because I become a sheep. And so what do I mean by that? Well, I want to be able to cultivate a reflective metacognition that says, what am I versus what is the pole of the algorithm? In other words,
so all of this is mush in some sense, right? I mean, you're always a sheep in the sense that you could go to a doctor, and obviously the doctor is going to have a lot more knowledge than you're probably going to have regarding, you know, what your prognosis is and how things will take place and whatever. So there's always times when you have to just concede that somebody else knows better or something else knows better. And that's just a fact of life, because you can't know everything. You can't be an expert at everything. You can't be a blacksmith and a carpenter and a artist and a farmer and you can't do all these things. There's only some things that you can do and be proficient at, and that's it. There's a limit. There's only so many neurons, and there's only so much time to absorb knowledge, so you're stuck with that. And what you're kind of hoping is that you have a knowledge base that is all compatible, and that it's all based on some kind of idea of engineering. Like, even as an artist, I would argue that I'm kind of an engineer. I'm not really thinking about being artistic. I'm thinking about the mechanical fact that there's a thing called contrast, between light and dark, and there's an illusion of precision in the sense that you can create a straight line out of a lot of little curved lines, or you can create a curved line out of a lot of straight lines. That it's all a visual effect, and that you can turn something and change how it looks. And so it's all, it's not some magical thing. It has to come out of some kind of knowledge of the mechanics. And that's, I would argue, most artists are doing, is they understand those rules. They might understand a different set of rules than I understand, but that's what they're following, is some rules.
In other words, if this is an exosystem around me that I'm using quite regularly, I sure as heck want to know what I am, right? This is an extended part of my mind that I endorse, that I transparently use, but I still need to know what my boundary is so I don't get lost in it.
Right.
We need to know how to think in connection with machines that could do the thinking for us.
Right. So
okay, so obviously the machines are not doing the thinking for us. They're doing the research for us. We still have to do the processing of that research. So the machines will tell us probabilities, and then we have to decide what we're going to trade off for what. We have to have some idea of, am I worth torturing a pig in some farm somewhere where it's in a pen, it never sees daylight, it just produces puppies, and it's in its own filth, and it dies miserably. Am I worth that? That's a simple enough question, and I can answer the question. I can say, no, there's no way I can figure torturing something, that there's anything I'm going to do that's going to be worth torture. So I have a simple answer. I wouldn't pay for that. I wouldn't construct that. I wouldn't make a system that works that way. And if there was a system that works that way, I would destroy it. I would end it. I would stop it. I'd unplug it. If there was a machine that did this, torturing things to make other things comfortable, I'd unplug it, because it's a bad machine. So that's all it is, okay? I have to do that thinking. The AI is not going to do any of that thinking. It's just going to tell you that something is bad happening, and here's some kind of good you're going to get for it, and you're still going to have to acknowledge that the AI can't know the value of the good, how good is the good, and how bad is the bad. You can know that, because you've experienced it.
Let me ask you this. One way to frame your answer is to say, I will consult the oracle, but I always need to make sure that if I follow its directions, I need to know the steps. I need it to tell me the full reasons. Is that fair?
I think it's more than that. I need to be able to exercise my deliberative capacity. In other words, knowing the reasons. It is not enough to just know them, right? I mean, this is the Meno,
right?
This is the idea that we need to have the statue of Daedalus, I think, tied down. And the only way we can avoid having this thought run away is through working through it, giving an account, as Plato would say. And so I need not just to know the reasons, but I also need to be able to work through them.
Whatever all that is, but obviously you just can't. There's no working through. There's just your capacity to experience something and say, is that experience worth this other experience? And you have to apply what is your innate weight. You know, you're measuring it. And so unless you're contriving some excuse, like I said, you can figure it out for yourself. You can certainly figure out, you know, like, okay, the swimming pool example, right? You're standing on the diving board, the water's, you know, whatever, 62 degrees. It's kind of cold. You know it's going to be a little unpleasant, but once you're in the water, it'll be okay. And you just sit there and, you know, persuade yourself that it's time to jump, okay? And so I have experienced that. You could just see your brain is struggling with, well, it's inevitable, you're going to do it, so you might as well get it done now. And even though you're saying that, you're still standing on the board. You're not nowing. You know, and so you have to keep making these little arguments to persuade yourself it's going to be worth it, that the shock, okay, will be recoverable, okay, it will not be catastrophic, and that the enjoyment of, you know, whatever, sloshing around for a little while will be okay, will be worth it, and that's it. But it's in some way to you not convincing, you know, so you're stuck in that little, it's, you know, it's not decisive enough. It's not 90-10. It's 60-40, and it's an ambiguous 60-40, and it's just sloppily saying go, go, stop, stop, red light, green light, yellow light. It's giving you a bunch of colors, and you know, that's what you're stuck with. But in this reasoning about what I can impose, well, impositional arguments are a lot simpler, in my opinion, okay? Because you don't get to be wishy-washy about it. It's an absolute fact that you're going to impose something. And that is, you have to be right. You don't have the right to make a mistake.
Myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, and the telos is really important as well, because there's a lot you can do. Like Rousseau wrote in the Emile about how to tutor, how to raise an autonomous child, right? And this gives us Montessori in the end. But one thing he does there is he configures the environment for the boy in a way that is very, I don't know, paternalistic, like controlling that environment. But there's a progressive letting go because the end goal is self-development. With an AI system, there's no end goal of self-development. You know, that oracle doesn't really care about that. That oracle would just as soon you be.
All right, so there's just no evidence of this self-development thing happening in the real world, right? It's just something the elites can do because they have all this spare time and they don't have to go to work and they don't have to do this and they don't have to do that. So all of that crap is a luxury. Okay, because it doesn't pay very well. Self-development isn't going to get you paid. I didn't get paid to do 10 years or 15 years of physics research. I didn't get paid anything. You know, I created a better database of a bunch of physics knowledge. You know, regardless of whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that's just a fact that I absorbed a tremendous amount of information regarding what physics is and what the science says. There's no reward for it, but I'd argue that it was a nice piece of development in terms of making my brain even better at some things and recognizing context a lot better. And so, you know, it was all enrichment. And I wish I had that passion in a stronger way when I was 15. I mean, I did have the passion, but it looked like some kind of obnoxious mathematical thing and not a conceptual thing, and I guess that was the big turnoff. And then I brought it back to being a thing about concepts, and that's what made it possible for me to regain some interest, is that I saw that they had fucked all the concepts, and so there was lots of there was lots of good reason to reanalyze it from a conceptual basis or foundation. Well, anyway, but you'd call that some kind of this better function. I mean, you're using your neurons to apply it to some bigger theme than, you know, chasing ass and pussy.
Perpetually dependent, and that you have a habit of passivity and you just do what it tells you to do.
Right.
So it's crucial that you set that goal,
Right.
of self-development and not of, you know, unthinking dependence.
Yeah. So I agree with much of what you said. One being that the shape of a good life is to be self-directed, right? So even if you're making all the right choices.
So this is just kind of silly. The definition of a good life is not self-direction. The definition of a good life is one that's got order and reason behind it. Faith is not the definition of a good life. You know, bowing to a totem pole that represents absolute nonsense and bullshit, horribly stupid, wrong conclusions, investing in falsehoods and fables is not living the good life. That's wasting a brain.
Dating Sally and not Susan, if you're not feeling in the driver's seat, if you live your entire life like that, that in itself.
What is this weirdo Ziggy character? He showed up in the physics video. What the fuck is wrong with you, you loony weirdo? What the fuck is this? Stupid Stickham Days bullshit nonsense. Fuck you in the ass till dead. What the hell is wrong with you? This isn't even a recognizable psychosis. It's not like he's a paranoid schizophrenic saying I'm working for the CIA or something. It's just this mushy, weird, disconnected drivel. And you're saying, where the fuck does that come from? I just don't know why the fuck this person watches my videos, why the fuck they're in the comments, why the fuck they're doing anything. What the fuck is that shit? You know, it's just, lying trolls is one thing, but completely irrational, nonsensical trolls, you're just like, what the fuck is that?
The form of that, even beyond the content of your decisions, robs you of the good life ipso facto, right? That's what you're getting at. So I would definitely not use this oracle in like VR glasses.
I mean, good life, again, by what definition? Good in that you were, in terms of your effect on the welfare of sentient life in the universe, you were an asset and a constructive advancement of its condition and its future, are the opposite. I mean, that's the only real standard. There's no other standard for a good life. If you're just going to say a good life is you're happy, well, people can be happy being rapists. People can be happy, you know, murdering children. People can be happy doing all kinds of crazy, dumb, fucking shit. So it's just nonsense to talk about all that matters is whether you're seeking your bliss. Chasing bliss is not the ambition. Chasing productivity is the ambition.
Mode where like it would always just tell me what to do. Raise your left hand, raise your right hand, because like. And I would gladly trade off suboptimal decisions for the fact that I'm making the decisions. Yeah. But here's why I want to challenge you. What if the oracle is so advanced that we can't even understand its deliberations? And before this sounds too dystopian, I'll draw an analogy to.
So again, now just this diagram of life as if this is really complicated when it's really simple, right? Sentience was invented by chemistry and then biology, right? The evolution of matter in the universe. So it evolved to have this reproductive function. Once it had the reproductive function, it built tools. Obviously, intelligence and sensation became a mechanism that made it tool enabled. It's a tool. It makes the organism capable of manipulating the environment, succeeding, blah, blah, blah. That's why we have it. Not very complicated, and all you're really saying is as a consciousness sampling sensation, can you draw the obvious conclusion that there's negative sensations, states of sensation, and positive states of sensation? I mean, less negative, let's just say. Containing no negative component, right? Isn't that all we're really doing? Is there's only one thing, there's the whip, and I can take the whip away, and that's bliss. And, you know, and that simple analogy does work. I mean, it does describe the circumstance kind of completely and richly, so it can be accepted as the theme or the idea, and that all you're really saying is why invent a system that runs that way? You know, that's all negative. It's a negative system, and you're just saying we're going to create the illusion of positive by eliminating or removing the negative, and that's obvious crap. And that's Benatar's asymmetry. There are no true goods. There's just eliminations of bads. So just eliminate the whole elimination of bad system, because an elimination of bad system, a system that works on negative and doesn't really have any true positive, isn't a system worth preserving. There, that's the summation of philosophy in a nutshell. And you're done. An AI isn't going to do it any better. An AI is going to just do it better with better grammar. You know, and that could be a Richard Burton voice telling you this basic concept that you're just a tool, something, a demo model, just to be used up and then thrown out. You're just a cog in the evolutionary process, and the process of evolution isn't even happening anymore in any kind of sense of design. There's no human designer, and there's no natural designer anymore. So you're not even playing any kind of meaningful role, and all you are is something being subjected to harm and less harm. And that's all you're playing for, is the less harm as an individual. And if you're smart, you're trying to play for less harm for sentient life. And ideally, the solution is don't make harm in the first place. Don't make something capable of being harmed in the first place. You lose nothing, and you gain everything.
Religion, right? Dante, when he goes to paradise, and he asks the eagle of justice, why is the poor virtuous pagan who lived before Christ, who never even had a chance to see Christ, why does he deserve to go to hell?
Mm-hmm.
The eagle of justice says, none of your damn business.
Yeah.
And then,
oh, yeah, so whatever, you could ask the same thing, like, you know, all the Native Americans go to hell, you know, because they didn't believe, you know, too ridiculous. You know, it's just part of the fable, though. All these fables are foundational narrative, and these aren't the rational questions to be asking. You know, the rational question to be asking is how do we distinguish our tool and the way we're using it from a bug, having a, you know, device that, you know, shoots acid or does something else to, you know, obliterate its adversary. And how are we doing anything different with our brains? And it's just kind of obvious that we're not, and we're being way too self-motivated, and we're not taking this incredible power to solve problems, to solve any problems that matter. And instead we're trying to, you know, put balls in hoops and shit.
the next canto, the eagle of justice says, I'm the eagle of justice. I don't even know. That's God, okay? I just delight, these are almost exact words, I delight in following God's will. The structure of faith, as I take it, is that you try to validate it as much as it
I mean, these comments again. So yeah, you're just making this. This fish man says, "Do you think you'll live for 2 more years?" Yeah, I don't have any confidence. No, just don't. No, I don't feel lucky. All right, you look sick. So again, compared to what? So if I took the average 65-year-old and put him next to me, you're saying that I look in greater danger of imminent death? I mean, you know, so what is that? I mean, it's just so ridiculous an insult. I mean, it's just so feeble and stupid. I mean, it's amazingly feeble and stupid. Anyway, just, you know, the crap that people type. Oh, I think I killed the wrong guy, but that's okay. I don't like him either. It's funny how this thing works. Tough shit, DWS. You did talk too much. Just amazing, though. I just, like somehow these people, they've already conceded that I'm insanely vain and that I have this very high opinion of my own opinion. So exactly how could you possibly suggest to me that I'm somehow, by your standards, unattractive or somewhat? I mean, it's not a threat. You can't possibly in any way degrade how much respect I have for my own opinion. So your opinion can't mean anything to me, especially on that kind of a subject. It just can't be relevant. And it just shows your desperation, like you're so fucking, exactly what you're accusing somebody else of. And that out of some silly little desperation, you're trying to reclaim some territory that your horrible condition is somehow a superior condition. When obviously it isn't. So, it is just... don't waste time interacting with the chatters. Yes, it's just the theme. Alright, well, it is getting a bit late, actually, so this probably is enough for a video to call this a video. 35 minutes, so it will take a few of these videos, no doubt. I don't know how far I'll pursue this. I mean, they really don't ever say anything in this whole video, and it wasn't until the end that they start throwing the entrepreneur word out, and they and again keep talking about some kind of autonomy, like there's some kind of giant threat to whatever it is, this freedom thing, that there's this oppressive thing that's stopping the freedom thing, and but there's no example of it, and especially related to AI, how there's some kind of threat as to the freedom of the AI or something. I don't know. It's just... So anyway, just an absolutely preposterously titled video for what the video is actually says. And the video itself is just this 2 hours of just a bunch of psychobabble. And, but like I said, it's sort of worth exploring that this is what people waste time. They waste time complicating something that's really simple. We know religion's a fable, okay, a nonsense. And we know the truth is that we're just animals, okay, with a tool, okay, a really interesting tool of being able to do this cognitive, imagine the future, imagine different worlds, and we can only do it because of language and education. Take that away and we're just ignorant animals, right? So, and all there is to do is to analyze the living condition as a liver and to say, what game am I playing? Is the game what's in it for me, or is the game what's in it for all the sentient life on Earth? And I would argue that it's kind of logically unavoidable to recognize the game is what's in it for all sentient life on Earth. That the only use you can make of the tool of your intelligence is to recognize the answer has to be, what's in the best interest of all the players, not yourself. All right, anyway. Yeah, the electrical thing I had was really great because I was singing a song at them as they were cutting my power off. Not because I didn't pay a bill, but because the hurricane made my wires unstable. But there really wasn't any threat, and there wasn't any risk, and it was all a moronic waste of money. But anyway, till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. I'll try hitting this button first.